Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Changed Konoha Forever? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. He looked around the class, a small smile on his lips. He remembered this day, even if it had been more than 12 years before. Soon Irika would walk through those doors. Soon, Mizuki would follow. Soon the rest of his life would start to play out and he would be able to change it, if he wanted to change it. He flicked a stray strand of blonde from his face. Blue eyes scanned the room one more time. Kiba was in the back room, a wide grin plastered on his face. Shikamaru was in the back too, on the other side, sleeping. Hinata was in the back as well, meekly poking her hands together. As his eyes roamed, he noticed the rest of the 9. Ino, Choji, Shino, and finally, his teammates. Sakura, a meek shy little Sakura that would grow to become a monster in her own right. Sakura who would eventually be able to pulverize mountains with her bare fists. Sakura that would grow into a woman, strong and independent. A healer, a friend, eventually, but now she was a girl. A shy meek girl sitting in the middle of the class trying her best to be ignored. He wanted to go up to her, grasp her hand in his and scream, "Believe in yourself." Tell her that she'd end up becoming one of the strongest women on the planet. She glanced up at him, a quizzical look on her face before she let out a blush. He smiled at her then turned to Sasuke. Naruto had vague memories of Sasuke as a child. He didn't know how he held up now. The doors slid open. Irika walked in, Chunnin vest on, that long scar on his nose and a small grin on his face. Naruto smiled too, then realizing the man would still hate him stopped. What was he going to do? As he was now. He couldn't do anything, no he could do something. It just wasn't very much. Hello class. Hello sensei. They chorused out in union. Let me call roll and we can have introductions, huh? I hope I have a good year from all of you. Naruto zoned out as Irika started to call roll. His mind drifting to more important things. He had 2 years before the Uchiha was wiped out. 2 years, and he had no clue as to what the hell he was going to do. Naruto! He snapped as he heard his name yelled accompanied by the sinkers of his classmates. Sorry sensei. I was daydreaming. Irika looked annoyed. Pay attention Naruto, don't make it a habit of yours. Lest you fail, or others pick up such habits as well. Irika stared him down, brown eyes staring into blue. He remembered this, he almost smiled, almost. But instead he stared, boring into the man's soul with his own blue eyes. Watching, unblinking, then suddenly Irika looked away. Hi, sensei, I won't let it happen again. He smiled, then frowned as he watched Irika flinch. He zoned out once more. But not as deeply. Beneath of your desks is a book. These books are a class set provided to each student that goes to the academy on a yearly basis. As you age and progress you'll get a new one every year. You should take care of these. They will contain homework and assignments, and losing or damaging your textbook is no excuse for not completing your assignments. Now, let's get started with today's lesson. It's simple, read the first chapter. It's simple. After that we'll have a short chat, and go outside to do some exercises. How do that sound? Naruto stopped for a moment to cast a casual glance at his book. Smiled when he realized it was pathetically easy, then reshifted his thoughts back to his own problems. Right now the greatest of his efforts would be attempting to deal with the Uchiha clan. 2 years seemed a while away, yet it wasn't. It'd be here before he realized it. Should he attempt to thwart it? That was stupid. The Uchiha were planning a coup. He'd have to find a way to stop the coup. Keep the clan from being subsequently persecuted, all the while trapped in the body of a 6-year-old. He wouldn't be able to save them, and even if he could. Naruto! He snapped his attention back to the room. You're supposed to be reading the first chapter. He blinked for a moment. He'd forgotten how much of an but Irika had been before he started liking him. I already know the material, sensei. Do you? Hi. Fine. Irika smiled. What are the ninja ranks within the village? Genin, Chunnin, Special Jounin, and Umbu. Naruto frowned. Should he even be revealing this much? He knew things he wasn't supposed to. At least not as a 6-year-old. But it was too late now, wasn't it? What's the difference between a special jounin and a jounin? A jounin passes the jounin exams. A special jounin is promoted due. He paused for a moment. How to word it? His vocabulary couldn't be too advanced, it would red flags and draw attention to him. But then, we're waiting, Naruto. Special jounin are promoted because they have skills. Another pause to find the right words. Skills in the right areas, like the medic nin. Most medic nin are promoted to special jounin after reaching chunin because they are skilled medics and can heal the wounded. They have skills that would place them in the jounin skill range, but it's specialized. Iruka was quiet. The classroom likewise. Naruto stared up at him, blue staring into brown once more. Very, very good, Naruto-kun. It seems you do know the material contained for this chapter. I'll expect the same performance from you from now on. For an instant Naruto was worried. He was being careless already. The class went on, and after an hour Iruka started to lecture. Quickly going over points as he strived to cram as much of the class's experience he could in a single day. Going over talking points through the lecture before finally declaring it was time to leave the room. Once everyone was outside, Iruka decided to speak. Every day we'll spend some time outside. He pointed at various targets. Some were human-shaped, others were simple targets, large and circular with big red and white concentric rings that got progressively smaller. Today will be target practice. Tomorrow we will test your physical capabilities and see exactly how we're going to rank you. Kiba raised a hand. Yes, what's your name again? He blushed and the children laughed. Kiba, my name is Kiba, Iruka-sensei. Thank you, Kiba-kun. What's your question? Will be ranked. Yes. Throughout your next few years your academic and physical performance will be scored and ranked. These rankings will be used to help us decide team placements when you graduate. Now. He pulled a scroll from his vest. Spreading it on the floor, and running a bloody thumb over it, a set of kunai appeared in a puff of smoke. Let's go over safety procedures and how to handle these properly. Wouldn't want any accidents, would we? Iruka let out a small chuckle and rubbed a hand behind his head. It was at that point that Naruto zoned out once more. Over the years he'd forgotten just how mind-numbingly boring most of the academy could be. Now that he knew all the things it would teach over the next few years, it would be even more so. He sighed, a frown forming on his face. He was useless as he was now, and would be for quite a few more years. It didn't help that he seemed to be recklessly doing things without thinking. As a Jinchuriki he would without a doubt be watched. His words analyzed, his actions thought over. No doubt the interaction with Iruka earlier this morning would be told to the Sandaime. If he started acting differently, stupidly, he didn't know what would happen. But, then again, did he want to keep the time stream as it was? He'd come back to change things. Why not start off right away? Why not prove himself as someone skilled and talented enough to warrant everyone's respect from the get-go? Why not place himself as someone Sasuke would respect, listen to, befriend? Someone Sakura could lean on. Someone Ji-san could be proud of from the get-go. What was the point of shearing away the veil of time if you didn't use the opportunity to completely change things? But then, he needed to be sure of certain events. The Uchiha had to die, he'd stay away from them as far as he could, at least until after the massacre. Naruto, would you like to go first? He heard the classes snickering again and looked around slightly confused. Iruka had a kunai in hand. Blade first so he could easily grab it. He grabbed the handle and waited for the man to release it before he pulled. Iruka seemed surprised then smiled. It seems you were paying attention, that's good. Why don't you try hitting the circular targets? It's not expected of you to hit the bull's eye the first time. Just try to hit it in general, okay? I'll make suggestions to help you, okay? He looked around for a moment. The other students' eyes were glued on him, watching intently to see how well he would do. Most notable was Sasuke. His onyx eyes seemed to boring into his body. Watching intently with anticipation. A small smile on his face. Naruto almost laughed, he looked so innocent. He turned his attention back to the kunai. They were small and lighter than normal. The sides were slightly dulled, though the tip was still razor sharp. In the midday fire country's sun they gleamed. He hefted them to get a sense of balance. There were 5 targets and 10 kunai. He grinned. Threw the first kunai with a swing of his arm and a flick of his wrist. It sailed past the target and he heard the chuckles of his classmates behind him. They were lighter than he was used to, not too much so, but still. That throw had been way over what he had estimated. He went to grab another kunai, and this time grinned. He hefted it once more, and with a flick of his wrist, sent it flying. It hit. Not a bullseye, but it was a second ring. He smirked as he heard the other kids fall silent. He picked up 2 more and threw those. The first hit the 3rd inner ring, and the 4th the bullseye. Then he picked up the remaining 6 and struck home. Every single time. The class was silent. Gee, good job, Naruto-kun. He bowed with a small smile on his lips. Thanks, Irika-sensei. He exclaimed at the man in a slightly louder tone than normal. He smiled as he looked at the looks on the other children's faces. XXX starting small XXXX. Lunch came and Naruto sat at one of the tables alone. Hungry. The small grassy field was filled with kids of all ages, running around and interacting with one another. His blue eyes cast around, and already he could see the old groups from his childhood start to consolidate. Choji and Shikamaru were sitting beneath a tree watching clouds while the larger boys snacked on both their lunches. Oh God, he was so hungry. He sighed, and placed his forehead down on the lunch table. He'd forgotten his lunch at the orphanage, in the sudden rush of his technique actually working, and him actually passing through the channels of time to the past. Now he hungry, so goddamn hungry. His stomach growled. Hey! He raised his head, small hands coming up to block the blaring light of the noonday sun. The sun blacked out the figure before him, but after a few seconds he could finally see. It was Sasuke. Short, little, almost adorable Sasuke. With a timid look on his face and a bento box in hand. Blue shirt and short white khakis. His hair falling to either side of his head, though the early signs of his strange hairstyle could already be seen. Hey! A PRDNT pause filled the air for a moment. This didn't happen last time. What should he do? What should he do? He made a decision. Want to sit with me? Sasuke smiled, and sat almost immediately. So. His voice was so high-pitched compared to what he remembered. You're Sasuke, right? Yeah. I'm Naruto. Good to meet ya. He reached out a hand and the other boy seemed startled, but then, with some hesitation, Sasuke extended his hand and the two shook hands. What are your hobbies? Naruto had a feeling he'd have to drive most if not all of this conversation himself. I like to train. Especially with my Aniki. I like to spend time with my aunt and uncle as well. Those aren't hobbies. Well, what are yours then? Sasuke asked. His voice sounded indignant. I like to. He couldn't remember anything he did at this age other than go to the academy. I guess I don't have any hobbies either. He blushed in embarrassment and a small smile appeared on the other boy's face. Well, what do you like to do? Well, dash. Suddenly there was a shout. Naruto turned to the source. It was another Uchiha, this one 3 or 4 years their senior. Naruto arched an eyebrow at the teen. He didn't remember much about the Uchiha and from what he could, this kid seemed to fit the bill. Tall, pale, with a sharp yet somewhat squared jaw. Dark brown hair and a white shirt. Black short khakis and a ninja holster on his leg. Naruto smirked. He'd forgotten about the whole, don't talk to the demon brat thing. That might get annoying in the future as he tried to influence things in the small way he could. When he was a child he would have cared more that he was ignored. Now though, now he didn't care, and most importantly he knew with enough time everyone would eventually come around to his point of view and or side. So when the nameless Uchiha came over, shouting how Sasuke-sama shouldn't associate with such trash, he kept a small smile on his lips. As the kid forcibly dragged Sasuke away, Naruto waved and smiled. It was nice talking to you while I could, Sasuke. Maybe we can talk more later. Then he was alone. God damn it, he was hungry. XXX starting small XXX. The evening came and with it the end of the school day. Naruto stood outside the academy waiting for what he wasn't sure, and watching the kids slowly parade about until their parents came to retrieve them. He cast a look at the blue sky above that was slowly transitioning to a deep orange. He should head back to the orphanage. But his memories of that place were far from fond. So for a few more minutes he'd stay here. He looked around. Sasuke was still here. Hey Sasuke. He jogged over in a light, yet fast pace. Hello. You waiting for your parents to come and get you? Yes, I'm waiting for my mom. My dad is the police chief for the Konoha police force, so he can't come and pick me up. Cool. He smiled at Sasuke. Are you waiting for your parents? No. I'm an orphan. I'm supposed to walk back to the orphanage with some older kids after classes, but they left without me. So I'm here until I'm ready to go home. Sasuke seemed shocked, then smiled apologetically. Sorry. About at lunch, I don't know what that was about. Naruto laughed it off, a wide-toothed grin birthing on his face. Don't worry about it. I'm used to it. Sasuke-kun, you made a new friend already? Naruto turned to the voice. It was a woman. A tall woman at about 5'8", with black hair and pale soft skin. She smiled down at them. It was a soft motherly smile, one of triumph, the smile of a mother whose words had come true. Kachun. This is Naruto, he's in my class. Naruto bowed deep at the Uchiha matriarch. Hello, Uchiha-san. And so polite too. And adorable. See, Sasuke-kun? I told you you'd make friends no problem. Kachun. Sasuke ummed. Naruto chuckled. He'd never seen Sasuke pout before, and being 6 made it all the more enjoyable. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to go take little Sasuke-kun away from you for now. We've got to go home for now. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Of course, Uchiha-san. She smiled at him, grabbed Sasuke's hand and pulled him away. XXX starting small XXX. The orphanage loomed overhead like a monolith. He'd mostly forgotten about this place. But as he stood before it, the memories flooded back. His small room in the back wing, the mean bullying children, the uncaring matron. He scowled. He hated this place. He remembered seeing this place leveled after Pain's attack and feeling happy that this place had been reduced to rubble. Then he'd felt immediately guilty as he carelessly tossed aside the ruined home of so many orphans. He sighed and walked in through the 2 large wooden door. Hey there, shrimp. He turned to the sound of the voice. It was another kid, about 2 or 3 years older than him. Kakashi. His memories of the boy were vague too. This was so long ago. Dressed in a black shirt and long tan pants, Akashi was a little over a foot taller than him, with curly brown hair that seemed to twist in and around itself more than anything. Brown eyes set in a small chubby face. He ignored him and started to walk to what he thought was his room. Akashi got in the way. Where you going, shrimp? To my room. That just seemed to make him angry. So you got a mouth on you, shrimp? What did I tell you about that mouth of yours? He ignored him and tried to move on. Akashi pushed him to the ground, then sent a right hook into his jaw. Naruto got up, a snarl on his face. When he was 6, he was too weak to do anything when this bully chose him as his victim. When he was 6, he wasn't a trained ninja and his body was weak. But now he was a trained ninja, and even if his body was weak, he still knew about fighting like one. His foot drove into Akashi's crotch. The boy crumpled and his foot came down on his head. The other orphans stopped. He drove his foot down a 2nd time, and a 3rd time. A 4th and 5th. A 6th, and Akashi stopped moving. His blood was pooling on the floor, leaving from his mouth and nose. As the rage left him, he looked on in horror. F dash, F dash, F dash. If he wasn't noticed today, then this would really draw attention. God damn it. He couldn't sleep that night. As he lay in his bed, his mind reeled, going over again and again what had happened that day. What had happened a mere few hours before. He knew better. He knew better. He lay in bed, his eyes wide open. Blue eyes staring into the dark nothingness of his bare room. Mentally, he knew not to attack. His mind told him not to attack. And yet, when Akashi had pushed him, when the larger boy had done what, as he remembered, countless other older, bigger boys had done before, Naruto had snapped. His foot had lashed out, and before he knew it, Akashi lay on the ground, a small puddle of blood pooling beneath his unconscious form. He sighed, and then with a grunt, swung his feet over the side of his bed. The cantankerous old matron had been furious. Her wrinkled face, just as deceivingly grandmotherly as he had remembered, warping into one of disdain. Her shrill voice shrieking at him for hurting poor Akashi. Once more he had felt rage fill him, but this time he could control it. This time it wasn't the mind-numbing fury, though it still made his blood boil. He remembered telling her numerous times about the bullies. About Akashi and his gang of cronies. About the shoving and the beatings and the name-calling. Yet, nothing had happened, it hadn't stopped, and after he told, it seemed to get worse. With his feet on the ground, he started to quickly shuffle his way towards the kitchen. She'd sent him to bed without dinner as punishment, and he could feel his stomach rumbling for food. After sneaking down the stairs and into the small side hall, he was in the kitchen. He walked to the fridge, pulled it open and took out an apple. Then he walked to the cupboard and pulled it open. He smiled when he saw a packet of ramen. He read it to see the flavor. At first, it seemed like glyphs for a few seconds, hard to comprehend and fully understand before becoming legible. Miso. He smiled. Miso was his favorite. Walking back to the cupboard, he pulled out a tea kettle and a small towel used to wipe up spills. He filled up the kettle with water, set the towel atop it to hit it screech, and set it to boil. Then he sat and waited. He had an idea, though he wasn't too sure on how valid it was. He was an adult in mind, but as a child, his body reacted to things as children should. With extreme bouts of emotion. Mood swings would be constant for him. He'd have to start meditating again, in an attempt to gain control of the raging hormones that now flooded his mind. With a crunch, he took a bite of his apple. He couldn't afford any more incidents like earlier this evening. He could feel the faint traces of Umbu watching him where he hadn't before. No doubt Ji-san had already been informed about both events at school and at the orphanage. The result was that his new Minders were meant to keep a watch on him and keep him out of further trouble. More bites of the sweet red fruit, spilling its juice into his mouth. He heard the muted shriek of the kettle and smiled. He finished the last bites of the apple and threw it away. Taking the cup of instant ramen and pouring the water inside, he waited the 3 minutes for it to boil. When it was done, he ate, and then threw the cup of ramen away as well, making sure to bury it beneath other trash to hide the evidence. Then, when he was finished, he put the kettle and the rag. But what to do now? The stars, he heard himself say. They look pretty tonight. Maybe he'd go stargazing. XXX starting small XXXX. Uzumaki-san shows incredible prowess for his first day at the academy. He seemed to be able to follow a lesson or discussion with only half his attention on said subject at the time. What his mind was occupied with I am unsure. He shows startling mental comprehension abilities for one of his age, though to what extent is yet unknown, as standardized tests have not yet been deployed to test the student's capabilities, though he is without a doubt sure to score incredibly high. Not only that, but Uzumaki-san shows an inherent capability to learn things quickly. With the kunai throwing exercise, he not only managed to score an exceptionally high score for one of his age, 10 out of 12 hits, but he managed to do so after only throwing a kunai 3 times to judge its weight and capabilities. Uzumaki-san shows inherent qualities of genius. It is suggested that special attention be paid attention to him in order to make sure he receives the training he deserves. The elderly Kage gave a small smile as he read through the report. It would seem genius was inheritable, especially if both of one's parents were geniuses. Perhaps he should pay the boy a visit. He hadn't seen the lad since he was 5. Nearly a year, no doubt the boy had forgotten him. But, with the boy entering the academy, and the incident that had happened just earlier that evening, a visit would seem warranted. He took his pipe from a small pocket he kept in his vest. Filled it with the sweet-tasting strawberry tobacco his wife had bought for him shortly before her death so many years before, and lit it. He took a deep puff of it and smiled. Then he picked up the second report. Report 11, Seagold. Reporting Unit, codename Giraffe. It should be noted that Akashi-kun has been reprimanded before for bullying both his peers and others younger than himself. It should also be noted that while the orphanage matron has helped put a stop to Akashi's bullying of other orphans, Uzumaki-kun's torment seemed to continue. It would seem that the orphanage made it clear that Akashi-kun was to do as he wished with Uzumaki-kun as long as the others were left alone. From what we could gather from the incident, it appears Akashi-kun was the instigator, choosing to assault Uzumaki-kun when Uzumaki-kun simply wished to be left alone. The resulting fight was quick, if somewhat brutal. After Akashi-kun's initial attack on Uzumaki-kun, Uzumaki went on the assault, leaving Akashi-kun with a concussion, multiple abrasions, a broken nose, and a fractured rib. From what we have gathered from the other orphans, and Akashi-kun, Uzumaki seemed unhesitant in his assault, doing his best to quickly down his larger opponent before going on a short, but brutal, assault. It should be noted Uzumaki-san seems to show inherent fighting capabilities, if not a lack of hesitance to finish a downed opponent. The elderly Kage frowned a bit. While children fought, and sometimes brutally so, they tended to be hesitant of fighting one another, despite their bolstering. Naruto-kun's lack of hesitance to finish a downed opponent was not normal. He would, without a doubt, be seeing young Naruto-kun tomorrow morning. He pulled out a crystal ball and charged a small amount of chakra through it. He concentrated, and then an image of a small boy laying in a forest appeared before him. He frowned. Children shouldn't be disappearing into the night by themselves, especially not children containing bijou. He made a hand sign and an umbu appeared before him. Owl, get to Squad 4 and ask them why young Naruto-kun is outside at 11 at night. A swoosh of wind and the umbu disappeared. The elderly Kage leaned back in his seat, took a long deep inhale of his tobacco. Giraffe, make me some tea please? Owl reappeared in a flurry of wind and smoke. Report. It would appear Uzumaki-kun snuck out after stealthily grabbing himself a meal. Why would he need to grab himself a meal? Has the matron not been feeding him properly? It would appear that as punishment he was sent to bed without dinner. From what she has gathered, this is slandered punishment for him, and he is often punished. Usually for minor offenses. He seems to be malnourished from this as a result. The elderly Kage frowned, then took a deep, long inhale of the smoke in his pipe. You know, Owl, I've had children of my own. And as I'm aware, you too have children. He stopped for a moment, his gaze peering into the umbu's face. Tell me what you think of a child being mistreated under the guise of punishment. It's an injustice, Hokage-sama. A blight upon the face of the world, and our village. Children should be treated like treasures. I want all appointments for tomorrow morning rescheduled either to the day after tomorrow or late in the evening. If they can reschedule, offer them sincerest apologies, and a promise give them priority when they have a more convenient time for us to meet. Hi, Hokage-sama. XXX starting small XXX. He woke up in cold wet water. With a groan he stumbled to his feet to wearily look around. He was in a sewer he knew too well. The dark wet place smelled with the rank smell of blood. Thick pipes, each red and blue, lined the wall, though the red pipes continually leaked into their blue counterparts. The water level rose up to his waist. It was higher than he remembered, or maybe it was because he was a child now. With some concentration he rose to the top of the water and started his slow walk towards the home of his closest friend. That's if you could call the sewer prison a home, and the massive demon fox he occasionally got along with, a friend. After a few minutes he appeared before the massive cage. The bars towered over his head, massive steel pillars that went higher than he could see. The gate was closed, though the seal that held it was now gone. He smiled. Kurama. There was no response. He frowned, went closer to the bars and peered into their dark depths. A claw hand tried to slam down on his head, and he barely managed to get back in time. His small form went leaping backwards, sending his golden hair flying and his cloths swaying in the wind of his mind. He scowled when he heard the laughter of the fox echo throughout his mind. You're so tiny now, I couldn't help myself. So you tried to kill me? What if it had failed and I hadn't managed to come back? What if it was just child me? It wasn't though. So your questions are moot. So, I can't believe you actually managed to pull it off, or they even let you do it, but with your luck, I'm not too surprised. Naruto smiled at the fox. I told you it would work. I didn't think it wouldn't. I just believed you would find some way to F it up and we'd end up too far back or not far back enough. And, looking at your stature, I was right. The fox smiled at him. Large red eyes staring down, and wide man-sized teeth shining against the deep black of his cell. Naruto laughed, then placed a hand behind his hand in embarrassment. I traveled through time, cut me a break, man. I don't exactly have experience with it, so, yeah. Though I think this time might be better than we originally planned. This gives us 6 more years to try to change things in little ways. If you say so. I'm worried though. The fox raised an eyebrow in surprise. Worried? It laughed a bit, its deep voice echoing throughout the cavernous sewers of his mind. What for? I'm not acting like myself, well, my older self anyways. Today I got in a fight. That seems just like you. No, I mean, I knew I had to ignore the kid. Just walk on and go by, but when he pushed me I lost it. I haven't been that angry that fast in years. I don't know what's going on. I knew I shouldn't have done it. Yet I did anyway. That's not like me. I'm not human, and my knowledge of human emotions and what affects them are limited. I don't think or feel like you. I'm made out of chakra after all. The chemical reactions that affect you, well, they don't affect something like me at all. Naruto frowned and then sat down. He ran a palm through the water beneath him, sending ripples in all directions. He looked back up at the fox, then back at the water. So, have your plans changed? I mean, the original plan was to wait around a few years for Obito to reveal himself, and try keep Sasuke around if we could. You know, hearing it from you, it wasn't really too well defined now that I think about it. Neither of us are one for planning. The fox was quite. What about the Uchiha? I can't do anything about the Uchiha. I'm too small, too weak. Just useless in general. And if I could do anything, then what? Stop the Uchiha massacre and have a civil war break out that tears apart Konoha? Tell people I'm from the future, prove it, and they get mind raped for information about the future? I started trying to befriend Sasuke today, and that's the only thing to do. Try to change Sasuke, or at least take care of him if he tries to pull the same stunts he did last time. I mean, I can't do anything. He frowned, then let out a long, deep sigh. I'm still contemplating whether I should try to keep things the same, or just go whole hog and say to the whole thing. Go for it. If you're willing to pull back the veil of time and space, why walk on eggshells? Stop acting like a newborn kid afraid of his own tail. The fox was right. He come this far, why hold back? He'd go all in. To amend the consequences, he'd change things to how he thought they ought to go. Triple X staring small Triple X. He woke up to the old matron towering over him, a scowl on her face. She looked at the open window in his room, then back at him. From where he lay, he could see the deep-set wrinkles, the silver hair slowly turning a stark white, the deep, cracked lines in her face. She sneered at him, showing white teeth against red gums. Get up, boy, and get ready. The Hokage is coming to see you this morning. Hurry. She looked at the window one more time. And keep that window closed at night, you'll let out all the cold air. She went to his closet, pulled out a white t-shirt and small brown khakis, and then tossed them on his bed along with a comb. Put these on after you bathe yourself. Make sure to comb your hair too, it's a rat's nest. With that she shuffled out of his room. He moved into the hallway and made his way for the bathroom. His door was the furthest from the bathroom, meaning as a child he was often bathing with lukewarm or cold water. He walked in. 30 minutes later he left the bathroom freshly bathed, his teeth brushed, and the clothing she'd given him on. He combed his wet hair then went downstairs. The matron was waiting, and so was the old man. The old man seemed massive. Like a giant he seemed to tower over him. The presence of the elderly Kage woke up emotions and memories long since buried. For a moment he thought he was going to lose it. He felt sorrow swell in his chest, felt his eyes water, his body quiver in pain. Then he reeled it in, grabbing hold of those emotions and bolting them down. He was better than this, better than losing control in front of this man. He took one deep, long breath. Hello, Hokage-sama. The old man seemed surprised, then smiled a bit wider. He looked at the orphanage matron, and she quickly shuffled away. He hid a snicker. "Hello there, Naruto-kun." The old man extended a hand, and Naruto complied with a hand of his own. "I'm not sure if this will come off rude, but can I ask why you want to speak with me?" Once again the Hokage seemed surprised, then mildly pleased. "I received some reports that said you displayed quite a bit of talent yesterday. I enjoy speaking with the possible talents, and the fact that you're an orphan piqued my interests quite a bit more. Tell me, Naruto-kun, have you eaten breakfast yet?" "No." "Then why don't we walk to a restaurant I know? It serves rather good tea, maybe we can get to know each other better." "So, how are you doing, Naruto-kun?" The old man's words echoed throughout the room. The restaurant was small and quiet. The waiters bustled from place to place, setting tables and preparing for the day. It was spacious, square-shaped and centered facing inwards towards a large central garden. The dawn sun shined down upon the hardwood bamboo floor, and the rich smells of tea filled the air. Naruto smiled a small smile at him. "Good. I heard you showed a rather promising amount of talent yesterday." "That's good to hear." Naruto looked at the old man. This was strange. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not for another year. The Umbu weren't supposed to be watching him for another 2. He'd been here for less than a day and already he'd changed things. And what was the old man playing at with this? Why meet with him at all? Why not just watch and wait? Thank you. Yes. The old man was quiet for a moment. He was watching him, studying him, and Naruto didn't know how to feel about it. Those deep pools of brown staring into his own sky blue. How was he supposed to act? Like a child? "How do you like the orphanage, Naruto-kun?" He was quite. This was a chance. It took a year for him to get out of the orphanage after the old man met him. Now, this was a chance he couldn't let up. He'd take it. "I don't like it. The kids are mean and no one wants to play with me." The matron is a cantankerous old hag. He watched the old man raise an eyebrow in amusement. "And when I'm hungry and tell her, she says I'm lying and greedy. But I'm not. I really am hungry." He was quiet for a moment and looked down into the cup of rich dark tea. The old man took a sip of his, sighed in contentment and smiled at him. "Continue, please." "The kids are mean. They bully me all the time, and when I tell the matron she doesn't do anything about it, but when I hit them back I get punished. I get punished all the time, even for things I didn't do." He pouted. "My room's small and cold too." He frowned as he heard his own voice. So childish, those problems were so childish. Yet, looking up at old man, he could see his soft brown eyes hardening. "You don't like it there?" "Not at all." "How would you feel with your own apartment?" "It might be lonely, but I'll have people check in on you every week to cook your meals and help you out." "My own apartment? Like, just for me?" The old man smiled, his wrinkled face warping into a wide-toothed smile. "Yes, as well as a small stipend for you to spend on meals, or clothes, toys, ninja tools. Whatever it is you fancy." "That sounds nice." "Nice. Yeah." Naruto finished the last of his tea and stood up. "Nice." He looked at the clock. It was almost 8 now. The academy would be starting soon. The academy's about to start. "You can tell time?" He seemed surprised, startled even. Naruto internally cursed. 6-year-old children weren't supposed to be able to tell time, at least not until they'd spent some time in an educational facility. "Yeah. You're just full of surprises, Naruto-kun. Come then." He smiled down at him and Naruto beamed back up. "Let's get you to the academy." Naruto got up. He smiled at the elderly Kage, bright white teeth beaming in pride, and the old man responded in kind. As they left the tea place, the old man held out his hand. Naruto stared at it for a moment, realized what the old man wanted and placed a hand in his. His hand was engulfed by the rough calloused palms of the old man. Then they started to walk and his mind went elsewhere. XXX Sarutobi XXX. The elderly Kage looked down at his young ward as they walked. It was obvious that the boy before him was a genius, prodigy much like the hegemony he descended from. The blonde child was brilliant. He spoke with the clear intent of any adult, and beneath those bright blue eyes was obvious intelligence. Calculating intelligence. The innocent child was far more aware of the world than he made himself appear. Sarutobi looked around. He frowned when he saw the disapproving glances, the fear, the hatred in the eyes of his people as they watched him and Naruto walk along. He looked at the boy and realized Naruto couldn't care less. The boy was occupied in his own thoughts. He was either ignorant of the looks or just didn't care. It was likely the latter more than the former. He was very much like his father though. That blonde hair, those blue eyes, and now that genius intelligence. No doubt it wouldn't take too long for people to start putting the pieces together. He stopped for a moment when he realized what he had just said. People would soon start asking exactly who Uzumaki Naruto's parents was. It likely wouldn't take too long for them figure it out as well. He cursed beneath his breath. He'd have to take actions, hide things, collude things, and that in itself would give answers to people smart enough to see them. Ojaizen. He looked down at the small blonde holding his hand. Apparently whatever had had the boy occupied no longer did so. He smiled down at the child, masking his own annoyance and worry. Yes, Naruto-kun? Is something wrong? Attentive child. No, not at all, Naruto-kun. I was simply absorbed in my own thoughts. Okay. The boy beamed back up at him. The Kage looked back around one more time. He frowned. Genius children. He'd dealt with genius children nearly all his life. His students, the Sannin, all of them had been geniuses. His son, Minato, Kakashi, Orochimaru. So many brilliant minds, such potential, wasted. Konoha bred geniuses, though it didn't seem to be able to keep them for long. A genius child, too much like his father. A village filled with ignorant people filled with fear and hatred. A child who without a doubt already knew of his village's animosity towards him. He frowned. Another failure waiting to happen. They walked on in silence. A few moments the wide gates of the academy appeared. Ji-san, we're here. It would seem so, Naruto-kun. XXX Sasuke XXX. Naruto was strange, Sasuke decided. But in a good way. He's obviously smart, brilliant really. Like Nissan, a genius amongst a crowd of normal people. But unlike Nissan, Naruto wasn't so drear, so depressed. Yesterday was just a glimpse into Uzumaki Naruto. Today he got to see more. Naruto was fast. He could run for seemingly forever. 30 laps around the academy was nothing to him, while the rest of the kids were passing out on the ground, gasping for breath. Naruto was quick. He could run through the academy training course in less than a minute and a half, while it took him 5. Naruto was smart. He could follow the lesson without really paying attention to it at all. Naruto was strange. He was smart, he was fast, and a genius. He had no reason to pick Sasuke as his friend, but deep down, Sasuke was happy Naruto did. So, all I'm saying is Mizuki-sensei's AD-. Sasuke coughed up his rice. What? He's AD-. Naruto proclaimed. His face was serious and his brows were furrowed. It was obvious to Sasuke that this was a serious issue for his new lunch buddy. Idly he wondered why his mother seemingly wanted him to associate with he wasn't an idiot, but he was somewhat lewd. What makes you say that? During taijutsu practice he paired all the clan kids against non-clan kids. Did he? Yes, Naruto raised an appraising eyebrow at him. He did. Me and you are one example, right? Sasuke nodded as he attempted to follow along. The fight between me and you was more or less a tie. That's because you're trained, and likely have been training since you could walk in taijutsu, right? He had in fact been doing taijutsu practice as far back as he could remember. And yet, he cast one more look at Naruto. How much taijutsu practice have you had? Huh? How much taijutsu practice have you had? The boy looked down, took a rice ball from Sasuke's bento and took a bite. Sasuke raised an eyebrow and Naruto raised one back. He forgot about it. He had a feeling trying to deal with it would be pointless. Naruto smiled at his resignation. None. I've been in fights before though. Sasuke nodded and took another bite of rice. So as I was saying, it's not exactly fair or even growth productive. Placing someone who doesn't have any idea how to fight against someone who's been training in it since they can walk sets an expectation of pain and sets the learning curve a little too high. Naruto stopped for a moment to think. He cast a glance towards the wooded area of the academy training grounds. It was so fast Sasuke almost missed it. It'd make it look like the clan kids with training are naturally better than non-clan kids without. It's unfair. The first year of the academy is nothing but evaluations. It's to teach us the basics and see how well we perform. He's messing with those results. Sasuke was quiet, horrified look on his face. That's unfair. See. Naruto smiled at him, a wide, devious smile. He's being AD-. Sasuke frowned. A look of displeasure came upon his face. You have something planned, don't you? No. But give me some time and I'll figure something out. Sasuke groaned, looked one more time at Naruto and sighed. I'm not sure if I want to be involved in anything you have planned. Don't worry. I'm sure whatever I come up with won't be too bad. But I don't want to be involved at all. Did you say something? He would have responded, but the lunch bell rung and they had to return to class. XXX Naruto XXX. They were still following him, his new watchers and guards. He let out a sigh of annoyance, but still he remained on his path. Naruto cast his blue eyes down to the small silver key in his hand. He smiled though, and gripped it firmer. The building appeared before him as he walked. It was just like he remembered it before it was demolished in Pain's attack. 3 stories high, and circular in shape. From here he could see the faded pink coat of paint that had once been red. He could see the rich red tiles too, faded as well, and bleached from the sun. He couldn't contain his excitement as he let out a quick yelp and ran for the apartment building. He got to the entrance, passed through the main office building and gave a casual wave to the landlord. He was about to go past him when he remembered he wasn't supposed to know where his apartment was. He stopped, turned to the man and smiled. He walked up to the counter, and stood on his toes to peer over it. The landlord looked down, his glasses sliding off his face and an inquisitive look appearing on his face. Hi. Yes, little boy? Naruto huffed in annoyance. He hadn't been called a boy in years, but then again he was a child. I'm looking for... He stopped, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the small square of paper the ANBU in the giraffe mask had given to him on his way to the orphanage. Apartment 29C. The landlord gave him a once-over, yawned, and grabbed a bottle of water from behind his desk. He took a deep gulp, wiped his mouth and sighed in content. The apartment building has 3 stories. The ground level is A, the second level is B, and the top level is C. 29C is on the top level. To the furthest right. Thanks. He grabbed the sheet of paper off of the landlord's desk and headed for his room. It wasn't the same apartment. In fact, this one was a little better. The paint seemed new, the floor was freshly polished, and all the furniture seemed new rather than second-hand. And best of all, it seemed they'd slightly modified it to fit a child's stature. There were stools of varying height sitting neatly against the kitchen wall. The doorknobs seemed smaller, easier to grip with smaller hands. He smiled and then jumped a bit in excitement. In the center of the apartment was a decent-sized table, not huge but not small either. On top of it was a note. He grabbed it and quickly scanned through it. To Naruto, this apartment at yours, Naruto-kun, I hope you like it. In the mornings and evenings bento boxes with healthy meals will be ready for you. A bento box for lunch will also be ready for you in the morning. A monthly stipend, a small amount of money, will be provided for you every month. Use this to buy clothing, ninja tools, small meals on the go, or even toys if you wish. It's yours to spend as you deem fit, though I do warn if it seems like you're spending it unwisely it will be lessened and you'll be forced to take some lessons on money management. The apartment has new furniture and the walls are freshly painted. Take any problems you have to the building's landlord as soon as possible. He will deal with them, don't put it off for too long or a small issue might turn into a big issue. In the closet hall is a small set of ninja supplies to start you off at the academy. The dresser in your bedroom has your clothing from the orphanage. The bathroom has soap and a new toothbrush for you. Remember, hygiene is important, Naruto-kun. Don't skimp on it. I hope this serves you well, Naruto-kun. Sarutobi Hiruzen Sandame Hokage. Naruto put the letter down and went to his room. A small twin-sized bed was sat in the corner. He collapsed face first into it with a sigh. The past 2 days had been tiring. The academy was boring, long, and arduous. Most of the children in his class were just that, children, unbearable little monsters who grated on his nerves. Irika-sensei was being AD because he didn't know better, and Mizuki was being a worse one because, well, he was Mizuki. Sasuke was amicable so far. But he didn't know how long that would last. Naruto sighed. So many options. So many choices. He had to talk with Kurama. He closed his eyes, slowed his breathing, and fell into the cage dwelling that his one friend lived in. The QB was there, his gargantuan form laying down behind his massive cage. His large red eyes stared down. "You're back." "I am." "Why?" "I'm lonely." "Of course." "So, how goes changing the future?" "I've got an apartment now, the old man's taken interest in me, and Sasuke now eats lunch with me, that's a thing." "So?" Kurama laughed, his voice filling his mind space and reverberating off the walls. Then he was quiet and serious. "Does the village bother you?" "No. I'm used to it. Besides, I have you and I know I'll be able to make friends in the future, so that desperation I felt, that need to belong, to be acknowledged, it's not there." "Good." Naruto smiled and the QB did also in response. They settled down into silence, enjoying each other's company. All the while, the world around Uzumaki Naruto moved. It inched forward 1 second at a time. 1 moment, 1 second, ever forward in time and space. He dashed forward and jumped, twisting his leg and spinning in an arc and driving it down in an overhead kick. Sasuke blocked it, but he expected that, and used his momentum. Against him. He grabbed Sasuke's arm as he came down, pulled him to the ground and drove a fist into his stomach. It was a dirty move. He smiled when it worked, pulled his feet in, and drove a kick into Sasuke's stomach. Sasuke went flying off of him, and Naruto stood up in triumph. "Time." He turned to Irika-sensei, raised an eyebrow in anticipation and waited. "Congratulations, Naruto-kun. Your first victory over Sasuke-kun, you've come far in the past month." The rest of the class was silent. They would be, of course. The fight between him and Sasuke was brutal, for academy students at least, because blood had been drawn at least once. They watched on, saying nothing, like they had done every time he and Sasuke had spared over the past few months. He grunted, stretched his aching body and limped over to Sasuke. That last kick had been angled wrong, and he'd pulled something. "Come on, let's get to the infirmary. Your face is leaking everywhere." He joked lightly and Sasuke smiled. Naruto extended his hand, Sasuke grabbed it, and with a grunt they stood up and started to limp to the infirmary, leaning on one another for support. "Now, Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, why don't you two come on over here and spar?" Maybe not as enthusiastically as Naruto and Sasuke-kun though. Irika's voice faded as Sasuke and Naruto got closer to the infirmary. As they limped through the halls, Naruto turned to his friend and grinned. "I beat your butt." It only took you 15 spars to do it? Who'd have thought?" Naruto laughed and continued walking. "For a genius, you act pretty stupid." He pouted at Sasuke. "I can see your attacks clear enough. It's just, I can't react fast enough." "So when you get faster, you'll be beating me all of a sudden?" Sasuke smirked at him. "I doubt it. Class rankings start tomorrow." "Do they? You ready to bask in my shadow, Sasuke? Revel beneath my might." "Don't be so proud of yourself, Naruto. I have a chance at that too." "I know, that'll make the look on your face all the better when I beat you for it." Naruto looked at Sasuke and smirked. A wide-toothed grin appeared on his face. Of all the students in his class, Sasuke was his favorite. For a 6-year-old, he was sharp and particularly mature for his age. While he seemed incapable of being able to connect with kids his age, because by default he wasn't a child, Sasuke seemed to be just the right blend of mature enough to be tolerable, but still childish enough that spending time with him was enjoyable, and tolerate his own childlike nature. Over the past month he'd learned some things. The academy was far more boring than anything he'd ever imagined, especially as an adult. The lessons was tedious and long. He read through the material they gave him in minutes, processed it half as fast, and was done with his work almost instantly after they gave it to him. He'd also learned exactly how annoying a group of 6-year-olds could be. On one hand, they were impressionable and had picked up on their parents' attitudes towards him. In the first week they tried picking on him, but he'd ignored it and they gave up easily. Then when it became obvious he was above and beyond them in terms of skill, they tried to befriend him, but he soon found he couldn't even begin to tolerate them. You keep thinking that. I will in fact keep thinking that, Sasuke. And I'll lap up your delicious tears as I prove you wrong. I heard Uchiha tears were the tastiest. You made that up. And? Sasuke had no reply and Naruto smirked at him. He was so easy to mess with. He looked up, they were here. The infirmary. The large red and white cross painted on its wooden doors. A nurse waited outside, an impatient look on her face. She scowled at the two of them. Naruto-kun. Sasuke-kun. Why is it that every time you two fight, there's always blood? Because we're manly men? Naruto asked coyly, causing the nurse to scowl in response. No. Far from it. You two have no restraint, it's like putting two monkeys. She scowled at them, but both boys smiled back. This had become a slight ritual between them and the head nurse. With wrenches in a cage. They keep hitting one another thinking knocking the other one out will get them freedom, when all they're doing is wasting precious little brain cells between the two of them that could help them escape. That's a contrived metaphor. Once more it was Naruto speaking up. The nurse harumphed in indignation and twisted around, grabbing both boys by the arm as she did so. Get in here, I've got a pair of idiots to heal up. XXX Sakura XX. As she ate with them, she was quiet. Normally, Sakura would assume people like Naruto and Sasuke would never notice her. Naruto and Sasuke, they were geniuses. Sasuke was the second son to a clan head, his brother was a Chunin, and apparently already on the fast track to Jounin. He'd likely spent all his life training to be a ninja. In fact, Sasuke could already use chakra at the age of 6. Naruto was like Sasuke, and at the same time he wasn't. Sometimes he was like the rest of them, fun-loving and carefree. But sometimes she saw a look in his eye, when he thought no one was looking. She saw a look that spoke of hidden intelligence far greater than what he showed. She saw taking stock, and observing, and thinking long and hard about what he was seeing. If the two of them were birds, Sasuke was a hawk soaring high in the clouds, swooping down to strike his prey and stealing them into the skies, and Naruto would be an eagle or a falcon, flying even higher, touching the brim of space before diving down towards death in a defiant call, waiting until the last instant to grab its prey, killing it from the force of the blow, and she'd be that prey. She didn't know why the boys had decided to come to her rescue, but she was happy they did. She still remembered the encounter, all too clearly. There she had been, crying as her bullies stood over her, trying to stand. As they pushed her down. Meek and already used to this torment that had started long before she entered the academy and despite that still continued. She'd been ready for more torment that day, and as she had expected it had come, but this time when they pushed her down and started to mock her for her frailty, a blonde boy had come rushing in him. Naruto, brilliant, smart, strong. Naruto who without a clan, or any training, could keep up with Sasuke. Naruto, who seemed to stare into space for most of the class, barely paying attention yet still managing to pass tests and class with seemingly laughable ease. Following him, seemingly reluctantly, had been Sasuke. Sasuke, hard-working serious Sasuke, seemingly just as brilliant as Naruto. The two had struck it off from the get-go. That first day they talked. That second day they sat together. On the third day of the academy, Naruto could be found excitedly chatting with Sasuke, who followed along with a smirk on his face. They were like knights in shining armor, appearing to save a maiden in need like the stories her Kachan read her on occasion. The bullies dispersed after a rather one-sided brawl, and there they stood, night and day. Naruto as bright as the sun, a wide-toothed grin on his face, his sky-blue eyes brimming with delight as he stared down at her. Sasuke, a look she couldn't quite place on his face, looked down at her in interest. His black eyes and even blacker hair reminded her of the night. She smiled as she turned to watch them. Naruto was wolfing down ramen, his cheeks filled with the noodles as broth slowly dribbled down his lips. Sasuke ate his more reasonably, though it seemed as if he'd picked up some of the speed Naruto had when eating the noodles. Naruto-kun, maybe eat a little slower? But Sakura-chan, we only have 15 minutes left. And the walk back to the academy is 10 minutes. I have to eat it fast or else it'll go to waste. You really want me to waste good ramen, Sakura-chan? Are you so evil? Truly. Large baby blue eyes stared pleadingly at her. She laughed. 5 minutes left to eat? Had she really spent so long occupied in her own thoughts? She'd barely eaten anything that day. No doubt before school was over she'd be starving. Come on, idiot, Sakura, let's go. We don't have much time left. Sasuke had finished. A few seconds later Naruto finished his second bowl. Bye Tsuchi-san, see you later. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. As they walked, Sakura spoke up. I talked to my mom. And? It was Sasuke who answered. She hadn't expected that. He seemed mostly disinterested in her, but over the past 2 weeks he seemed to be slowly opening up. Ka-san said it's okay. We can train after school. She thinks it'll be good for me since you two place top in the class, and I'm third, but only because of academics. Naruto was beaming. He turned to Sasuke and smirked knowingly. See, I told you her parents would be okay with it. Pay up. Sasuke grumbled and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a 200 ryo note, likely 2 weeks of his allowance, and slapped it into the boy's hand. Naruto pocketed it and patted Sasuke on the back. We can't win them all, Sasuke. Yeah. Whatever, Naruto. You guys bet on me? She didn't know how to feel about that. No. She stared at Naruto. Naruto stared at her, and the awkward silence of Naruto stating such a bold-faced lie permeated their small group. She laughed, and Naruto smirked at her. Come on, let's get to class, guys. XXX Sarutobi XXX. He leaned back into his seat, deep dark lines forming as his wrinkled, turgid face morphed into a scowl. He sighed as he was often wont to do, and picked up the wooden pipe on his desk. He stuffed it with tobacco, lit the pipe and took a deep puff of the rich smoke. His eyes scanned the weekly report on his young charge. This had become ritual now. Over the past 8 weeks he'd had his ANBU watching Naruto-kun. He'd also had them recording his daily activities to be compiled into a report at the end of the week. He read through the report one more time, this time, reading through the various notes left by both his academy instructor and his Chunin sensei. Naruto seemed to be progressing prodigiously, and looked like in less than 2 or 3 years the boy would be ready for combat. He'd have to start concealing and colluding the boy's heritage now. He made a hand signal. Jaguar. The masked Umbu appeared before him in a blur of speed. Call the head librarian and the administrator of records to my office. Tell my assistant to prepare some tea. Assure her to bring saucers of honey and sugar. If I remember correctly, Dashida-san favors the natural taste of honey. Jaguar bowed deep, then disappeared in a blur. In the meantime, the old Kage took a deep inhale of smoke. He let the nicotine settle in his lungs, let the substance seep into his body, then slowly he breathed it out. A few minutes later his assistant walked in, 3 cups of brewed tea in hand and saucers of sugar and honey in the other. She set them down, then bowed deep to him. Is there anything else I can do for you, Hokage-sama? No, thank you. I'll call you if I am in further need of your assistance. Of course, Hokage-sama. He took his momentary reprieve to read through the weekly report once more. He chuckled as he read through his young charge's escapades. It would seem, in his own boredom, Naruto had decided to undergo various missions as he called his seemingly random assortment of pranks on his taijutsu sensei. The organized acts of minor terrorism on the man were rather well executed, and if he hadn't had ANBU there to watch Naruto and his friends partake in them, well, he wasn't sure anyone would have ever known about them. His 2 little friends seemed to be quite capable as well. One of them was Fugaku's child, not too surprising considering his family. The other was quite surprising herself. Ranked 3rd in the class, and the daughter of a civilian council member. It would seem young Naruto-kun was finding the rather skilled members of his class and befriending them. The pattern didn't seem particularly random, and from talking with the boy he'd gotten the impression while the boy could be wild, he also did little without a plan beforehand. What was the boy playing at? Hokahima, you called? The quiet knock of an elder woman rang throughout his office. Her hair was white, and her skin just as wrinkled as his. Yet, despite that, her sharp blue eyes saw all, and brought to the surface a magnificent intelligence. Dashida-san, good afternoon. Have a seat, warm tea? She grabbed the cup, took the saucer of golden honey and poured it in. She took a small spoon and stirred it for a few minutes. Then she took a drink and gave a small smile. This is quite good, Hokage-sama. I'm glad you like it. I still remember your preferences from when we were young. She smiled a coy smile at him and then laughed. You'll dog, trying to sweeten me up before you ask an old lady for a favor? I'm just as old as you, Dashida-chan. So it's Dashida-chan again? Sarutobi smiled. It is. She took another sip of tea and sighed. So what do you want of me? I need the record on Uzumaki Naruto blacklisted and sealed for at least the next 7 to 8 years. A blacklisting? How many jumps? The old man stopped for a moment. He hadn't thought about that. A blacklisting was a thorough classification job. Special ink was applied using the Hokage's seal and it made all files and records pertaining to a thing unable to be viewed by people that weren't the Hokage. The jumps reference to association to the people or things being blacklisted. 3. She stopped drinking her tea for a moment, cast a glance at him as if to double-check. He nodded and she sighed in resignation. On who again? Uzumaki Naruto. Oh, no wonder. I've heard he has gained quite the reputation as an upstart genius. Indeed. It doesn't take too many jumps to come to a conclusion we'd rather have safe for the time being. I doubt we'll need all 8 years. But anything to keep spying eyes uninformed and wondering. I understand. She took another sip of her tea. His father looked down at him, his dark brown eyes and jet black hair gleaming in the glow of the candlelight. He read over the form, cast a look at Sasuke and then read the form once more. Sasuke stood firmly, unmoving as he waited for his father's judgment. He seemed pleased, though it was hard to tell with his father. The man's face seemed to be a stone monument, an unmoving, hardened structure that remained unchanged no matter the circumstance. Sasuke, you've done rather well. So he was pleased. That was good, Sasuke decided. He'd heard his parents' arguments over his friends. His father at first had seemed opposed to Sasuke spending time with Uzumaki Naruto, but as the months wore on, and it became obvious Naruto was another class of genius, his father's complaints had stopped. When it became even more obvious Naruto was taking those around him, that being Sasuke himself, and Sakura-chan he'd even heard the occasional praise. I think this would be good for you. I assume your friends will also be attempting this as well? Hi, Tusan. His father was quiet once more, his face unchanging. I would like to meet your friend, Naruto. Let him know he is invited to dinner. And that was that. Sasuke was allowed to go to his room. The oppressive fear he'd held in his chest lifted and he sighed. As he walked to his room, he spotted his mother in the hallway. She cast a small smile towards him, and he knew she had some involvement in this, whatever it was. Ka-san. Sasuke-kun. Her voice was kind. He looked at her and smiled. She smiled in return and that was enough. She meant no ill will and so he continued on to his room. When he entered he sighed in frustration. Naruto seemed to be good at that, bringing frustration and needless complication to things. Now he had to worry about how idiotic genius would act in a formal event. He doubted Naruto would know the subtle nuances of a proper dinner. This meant he'd have to teach him, lest it reflect badly on him for not at least attempting to teach the orphan boy. He sat down and pulled a scroll off of his desk. It was orange, an obnoxious potent color that appalled him, and the scroll was covered in the neat, flowing script that was Naruto's handwriting. Hand-copied scrolls of chakra exercises. He smirked. Naruto was good at getting his hands on pieces of information he shouldn't have had. Water walking. Sasuke was glad he'd listened to his mother and tried to befriend the blonde. It had paid off, and already Sasuke could tell he'd benefited from it. They'd all benefited from their strange friendship. His father's willingness to want to meet Naruto just proved that. He read through the scroll for the last time, reassured himself that he had memorized it, then set it away to be burned later. There was a knock on his door. Enter. As his mother walked in, she had a small smile on her face. She moved forward until she came to sit on his bed. She seemed sad and happy, a mixture of emotions. In her hands she held the early graduation form he'd shown his father. Sasuke? Her voice seemed to hitch in her throat. Are you sure about this? Naruto thinks we're ready. She laughed at that and nodded. The trio had become known around Konoha. They ranked the 3 highest in their class, outshining everyone else by miles. Most people acknowledged it was due to the influence of the blonde-haired boy, though not all did so happily or as a compliment. Sasuke didn't know this though. Does he? She looked at him and sighed. She grabbed him in a hug suddenly, gripped him tight, and sighed. She shuddered again and he felt a wet droplet fall on his head. Tusk, be strong, be smart, be careful. I don't want to bury any of my children. Ka-san. Please. The form in his hand and got up. Rest up, Sasuke-kun. Tomorrow's going to be a hard day for you. She leaned down and kissed him on the head, then left the room. He looked at his door, waiting for something, anything, maybe her return? But his mother didn't come back and he turned around. A realization dawned on him. He'd have to teach Naruto proper etiquette. Naruto was an orphan, so knowing proper etiquette wouldn't be expected of him. But he wasn't, and so Naruto's lack of proper etiquette would reflect on him. He sighed as he jumped onto his bed. He looked up at the ceiling, then without even realizing it, fell into a deep, long sleep. The next day came easy. He got up, got ready, and went to Naruto's house to meet the blonde-haired boy. When he told him about the invitation to dinner, Naruto laughed, with that knowing smile of his. He'd scowled in anger, then sighed. You knew this was going to happen. Eventually. He looked at Naruto, raised an eyebrow and nodded. Do you have proper etiquette? Do you know the rituals? Naruto laughed again. Then nodded. Come on, Sasuke. He was smirking like a fool. Of course I do. Naruto grabbed his wrist and started to run, and reluctantly he had to follow. As he was dragged from Naruto's apartment, he grunted out. Slow down. No. Damn it, Naruto. Slow the hell down. The blonde turned back and instead pulled him harder and picked up his pace. The village started to turn into a blur. It flitted past him as they sped up. Where are we going? To Sakura-chan's. Is something wrong? Why are we in such a rush? To see if her parents signed, of course. Of course. Sakura's parents were civilians. To graduate early you needed your guardians to sign your release forms. An easy task for Sasuke and Naruto. Naruto was a genius, and the Hokage seemingly personally took interest in the orphan boy's well-being. Sasuke's parents had signed, because they were ninja, and Itachi had graduated early. Civilians though. He freed his hand and then did what he remembered from one of Naruto's chakra exercises, pushed chakra into his feet. The blur turned into a tunnel of STRNG colors. He felt Naruto's hand grasp around his own again, leading him to where they should go. After a few minutes they suddenly stopped. Sakura's home was a large thing. Yet it was also humble. Painted a simple eggshell white, red rose bushes waited on either side of its walls. The two of them took a few seconds to get themselves presentable. They knocked and waited. The silence was tense. Sakura came to the door a few seconds later. With a smile on her face. Did you say what I told you to say? Yes. She said. Idly he wondered what Naruto told Sakura to tell her parents. And? They said yes. He smiled and Naruto yelped in excitement. He watched as his blonde-haired friend wrapped Sakura, and then him, in a wide and tight hug. Then, like an butt, he started to gloat. See? What did I tell you, Sasuke? Naruto. Sakura tried to stand up for him, but it was a weak defense at best and Naruto kept at it. Who was right? That's right, I was right. But was right, Sasuke. Then the blonde laughed, and Sasuke frowned in response. But, we're not done. We still have to pass the exams. I think we should be prepared, but still. Are you sure they'll put us on the same team? Sasuke looked at the blonde again and waited for a response from Naruto. We will be. The politics of the whole situation ensures we will be. What? Sasuke-kun's right. What? Think about it. Three geniuses graduating early at the same time like the three Sannin. One of them is the daughter of the head of the civilian council. The other is the second son of the largest and most powerful clan in Konoha. The last is an obvious genius, and can clearly be seen leading the other two. And best of all, we work together, we're friends, and they see us together all the time. They'd be stupid to not put us on a team. And the political pressure to put us on a team will be too strong. You seem confident about this. He looked at Naruto a second time. He did this all the time, went from buffoon to analyst, to buffoon like a swing. He smiled at him. I've never been wrong before, Sasuke. I'm not going to start being wrong anytime soon. XXX the Sandaime XXX. His brown eyes stared into the wooden walls. He took a puff of his pipe, leaned back into the rich, padded leather of his chair, and smiled. Moments like these were rare. It was moments like these, with no paperwork, and no imminent business to deal with, that he lived for in this office. It's in moments like these, with the Konoha sun setting in the window, and a cool breeze wafting in as the day started to end, that he liked to sit and just think, to let his mind wander and just ponder on the various things it wished. Recently, it wished to think of a young blonde with eyes like the sky, and a mind as sharp as his parents', perhaps a mind too sharp for his own good. Naruto was smart. That much had been obvious. A genius really. Much like many children the Sandaime had known, Konoha seemed adept at making them, though keeping them, he sighed. A genius, who had in the past 6 months since the academy started, managed to make a name for himself with his skill and prowess. A genius who had made it clear that he was the best. A genius who had found 2 other such prodigies and then brought them up high with him, all at the tender age of 6. In 6 months Naruto had skyrocketed, his skills had climbed, and the boy seemed nowhere near stopping anytime soon. Not only that, but he'd managed to drag 2 other children along with him. Sasuke, Fugaku's youngest child, and Sakura, daughter of Imiku, the head of the civilian council. The 3 of them dominated their class, and soon the 3 of them would be ninja. In truth, it was really unavoidable. Considering who his parents were, Naruto was without a doubt going to be powerful, even if he had somehow managed to not inherit any of Minato and Kushina's intellect. Yet he had, and now things would get bothersome. People had already started taking notice, and already connections were being made. Whispers and rumors were spreading, and the faster Naruto grew, the more powerful he became. It had occurred to him to deny the early graduation request. No doubt the boy was ready for early graduation, he was skilled enough. Smart enough too. However, loose dots could be connected fast, and it wouldn't take anyone too long to see the similarities between him and his father. Especially so if he showed incredible talent at a young age. But the boy, the cunning, amusing annoyance that he was, had been prepared for this. He'd had his friends, they were friends, yes, but he was obviously in control of the little group of prodigies. They were his friends and teammates, as well as his lackeys. He'd had them sign and fill it out as well. Word spreads fast within the council circle, and those around them. 3 prodigies, all friends, all attempting to graduate at the same time? No, he had to sign. He let out a sigh. Naruto reminded him too much of another young prodigy he knew. One who he'd held pride in, and one who when it came to it he had been too weak to kill. He took a deep breath of his pipe and leaned back, deep into his chair. In truth, the boy worried him. He seemed as two-faced as the report on him implied. Going from joking youngster to beyond his years in an instant. Able to switch between laughter and cold-hearted calculation in a heartbeat. Was the boy a cold, calculating individual beneath a facade of laughter? Much like Orochimaru? Or was he like his father, able to press that mental button, able to chill himself like ice and focus solely on what lay before him? For now, the Sandaime gave him the benefit of a doubt. But still, he would watch and be cautious of his blonde ward. XXXX Naruto XXX. The 3 of them stood out in the examination center. The older children looked at them skeptically, brows raised and slight smirks on their faces. He smirked back, his eyes staring them down. He looked left, then right, and his smirk turned into a grin when he noticed both Sakura and Sasuke doing the same. He'd wondered if he was doing the right thing, pushing for early graduation. He'd pondered it for weeks, talked about it with Kurama, and still, he wasn't sure if this was right. But he had no other choice. He was above and beyond, and without a doubt in the following year they'd be placing him on course for early graduation. He'd rather he do it on his own terms. So he colluded a bit. Why not graduate early with his team? So over the past 6 months he trained hard, and trained his friends harder. They were too small for proper physical training, but cardio and sparring were good starts. It would be enough for them to skate by. Chakra exercises both raised their reserves and honed their skills with their life essence. Already his reserves were Chunin levels, and Sasuke's were Genin. Sakura's was nowhere near that, but her control far surpassed the two of them and made up for it. They were ready, they would pass, and they would blaze into the future. They'd grow strong and make names for themselves, and when Obito finally came out of the shadows, he'd kill him. End it even if it cost him his life. But first, he looked left again. You ready? Of course we are. Sakura's voice was confident. Are you nervous, Naruto? Sasuke's smirk was mocking. I'd be stupid not to. Let's go take a seat. The exam starts soon. Don't worry about the written portion, it's not weighed as heavily as the physical evaluations. A simple 75 should be enough for us to pass. But you don't want us to get a simple 75. You want us to dominate this exam, don't you? Just passing it isn't enough. He laughed. Sakura knew him too well. Let's show them that we're above and beyond. Let's go kick some butt and take some names. Oh my god. You didn't just say that. She and Sasuke were laughing now. He pouted. Sakura knew how to kill his mood so easily. We're in testing room 3. Let's go. They followed, and after a few minutes they found their testing room. The large number 3 adorned above its sliding doors. Quiet mutters could be heard from the other side. He slid it open, and the room fell silent as he walked in. He looked around and stared each and every single person in the room down. Mutters rose more as Sakura and Sasuke followed him inside. They sat together, ignored the stares of the older students around them, and talked quietly amongst themselves. You guys ready? Stop asking us that. Of course we are. Sasuke said, voice filled with annoyance. I'm just making sure. Stop worrying, Naruto. You can pass no problem. It's not me I'm worried about. He grimaced when he realized how that sounded. He looked at Sakura and Sasuke, they seemed annoyed to say the least. Well, if you too. He gasped. Sasuke almost never cursed so blatantly. His insults were wittier, better timed, and less blunt. He almost laughed. He'd apparently riled up the Uchiha. I meant no harm. We know, Naruto, you're just a socially inept butt. Apparently, Sakura was mad too. She never cursed, never. He smiled and ignored it. Then the two of them blossomed into wide-toothed smiles similar to his. A Chunin entered a few minutes later and they took their seats. They sat next to each other, Naruto and Sasuke on the periphery with Sakura in the center. The Chunin, a tall lanky man with auburn hair and eyes to match, yelled to quiet the room down. And then he flared his chakra and killing intent when only a few became silent. This dash, he shouted. For some of you this is the beginning of your ninja careers. All of you are here because you meet the minimum preliminary requirements for you to take the graduation exam. That does not mean that you meet the requirements to graduate. Some of you are here for early graduation. Naruto could practically feel the room full of eyes on the three of them. Do take note that despite physical limits you must still meet the requirements of the exam. One portion of which is taijutsu-based. You must show exemplary taijutsu skills. Not simply for your age or stature, but as a whole. Naruto almost laughed at that. That wouldn't be a problem for them. Naruto's taijutsu form was quick and painful, his blows were vicious and left no room for the opponent to escape. Sasuke's was the darting precise style meant for use with the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Sakura, she was the weakest link if you could call what she did weak. While not vicious like his, or precise like Sasuke's, she made up for it with chakra-laced punches and a perfect academy style. They would have no issues with the taijutsu portion of the exam. As the exam papers were being passed around, he looked at Sakura, then Sasuke. We've got this. Triple X Fugaku Triple X. He was not a blind man. He was a ninja, more importantly he was an Uchiha. He could see, quite clearly, the changes in people, and the changes in his son. Sasuke had always been a smart boy, not a genius like his brother, and Fugaku often admitted had Itachi been normal or not born at all, would have been seen as a herald of the Uchiha clan. He was very talented, just not prodigious like his brother. At least, that had been the assumption he had made. But assumptions could be wrong, and an Uchiha had no shame in admitting his wrongness as long as he learned and made up from this mistake. Sasuke was a genius. He just needed another, different type of genius to bring about his own natural inherent talent. The Uzumaki boy was that genius. It was obvious whose son he was. That blonde hair, those blue eyes, that intellect that even if his wife had not known Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato he would have known. Who did the Hokage think he was kidding? Only out of willful ignorance and denial would you not be able to connect the rather obvious clues, or perhaps lack thereof. The boy had brought out the best in Sasuke, and it had changed him. Once his son had looked up at him in awe and reserved hope, but that seemed so distant now. Now his son looked at him in not contempt, not fear, respect. Yes, in respect, and sudden understanding of the power he held. And yet, another understanding that soon, in a few short years, and indeed how short were those years, he would surpass the power of his father. The same look Itachi had given him around that age. The sun crawled lazily through the sky and, for a brief moment, a bell rang. Then the sounds of children running out of school grounds accompanied his thoughts. He watched the examination room empty in disinterest. Then, a short, excited form, much smaller than the other children, exited. Followed by a mop of pink and finally the deep rich obsidian black that was his son's hair. On all of their foreheads were the shiny new forehead protectors that marked them as new ninja of Konoha. He smiled. As expected. Sasuke spotted him, a look of surprise was marked on his face as he did so, but still he grabbed his friends and pulled them towards him. It took them only a minute to get to him. He smiled, and Sasuke again seemed surprised. He rarely smiled at all. Such things should be held for truly rare occasion, and this he deemed as one of them. "To-san." His son seemed to be at a loss for words. "I came to pick you up today. Your mother is busy with dinner preparations. I see you passed, as did your friends." He nodded at the pink-haired girl and turned his attention to the blonde. Blue eyes stared into his, and had he been anyone else, he would have gasped. For a brief moment, they analyzed each other, blue against deep, almost black, brown. The boy's face was solemn as he observed him, as if he was peering into his soul and judging him. Evaluating him, his entire life, his faults and failures and success. Then a frown was on the boy's face, followed by a smile. Then as if nothing had happened, his face returned to normal. But those eyes, he'd seen those eyes on the face of someone else. Those eyes that said a decision had been made, that a train of momentum that started with just a thought had begun. He'd seen those same eyes in the face of Namikaze Minato. He looked away, he just couldn't peer into those eyes. Then both the girl and the blonde bowed. "Hello, Uchiha-san-sama." The boy had let the sand trail. He wanted Fugaku to know that his station as head of the Uchiha clan meant nothing to him, but still he held respect for the man. "Hello, Uzumaki-san." Formal, only formal. "Hello, Haruno-san." He turned to Sasuke. "Uzumaki-kun, Sochi, we must not dally. Your mother has worked hard on this meal, Sasuke, and Itachi will be there as well. Nii-san's home." The sound of surprise in his voice made him chuckle. Fugaku watched as they stared at one another. Two birds of the same feather, two adults, for what else was he to call minds such as those, in the skins of children? His son Itachi watched on with interest, cold black eyes staring into sky-blue pools. They were silent and their eyes roamed one another. Then suddenly the Uzumaki boy smiled, and surprisingly his son did so in turn. Itachi hadn't smiled in years. "I thank you for inviting me to your home, Fugaku-san. And I thank you for receiving my invitation. I hope you will find your meal delicious, I hope you will find my home adequate, I hope you will find my family pleasant and your time here enjoyable." Fugaku smiled. That was an old mantra, As old as Konoha itself, maybe even older. The boy continued on. Your home is wonderful. Your family far more than pleasant, and I am sure your meal will be splendid. Good. Why don't you and Sasuke-kun go and wash up before we eat? When you return we will discuss what needs to be discussed. Do what needs to be done. By then my wife should be done. They were back a few minutes later, and once more the Uzumaki bowed. The meal before them was a simple one. Rice and steamed tuna, with lightly fried vegetables. He waited, as was tradition, for his guest to eat first. The boy waited as well, taking time to look at every piece of food, savor the smells, and then he smiled. A wonderful meal, Uchiha-sama. The blonde turned to his wife. My mouth waters at the thought of eating it. He picked up his chopsticks and slowly started to eat his meal. Fugaku followed, and afterwards his wife and children started to eat as well. They ate in silence, and when they were done Mikoto began to pick up the plates. It was then that Fugaku decided to speak with the young blonde. Uzumaki-sen, tell me, what are your dreams? He stopped for a second. The boy looked at him, his blue eyes burrowing and seeking something in Fugaku before he responded. I want to protect my precious people. I want to become so strong that no one can touch them. I want to make them so strong that no one will even think about touching them. I want to protect Konoha and her people. I want to make my friends and old man Hokage proud. His voice started out strong and stayed that way. Despite its small, high-pitched tone, Fugaku could still easily tell how serious the boy took those goals. Those are admirable dreams, Naruto-kun. The voice was that of his son. Itachi had chosen to remain quite the entire dinner, and when he finally spoke, Fugaku could see his son's eyes peering at the Uzumaki. Their eyes locked, some deep understanding went between them, and suddenly Fugaku felt slightly lost. Set adrift at sea, an ocean of the unknown crashing down on him. His stomach wrenched. He looked at Sasuke and he too held the same look. I hope you can achieve them. He will. Sasuke and Naruto spoke at the same time. Fugaku felt lost. Something had happened here, but what? Commandeer between similar minds? A meeting of lost souls? He sighed in annoyance before casting a casual look at the clock. It seems it is getting rather late. Itachi, why don't you escort Naruto-kun home? Of course, father. His eldest son and time Naruto both stood. Can I go with you? Ask father. Fugaku looked at his sons and the blonde once more. Then nodded his head and Sasuke stood as well. The three exited the room a few minutes later. His wife returned as they left. So? He looked at her and allowed himself a smile. I like him, he's bound to go places. He was observing us, you know that? Judging us. I think he liked what he saw, he laughed. He deemed us worthy of protection as one of his precious people. I couldn't understand it at first, Itachi noticed it, then Sasuke. Really? His wife's voice was lightly jovial. He wants to protect us? Maybe in the future, but now he's a child. That's the thing. For now he's a child, but the years are short and soon that child will be a man. What then? His wife was quiet for a moment. Yes. He stood up and kissed her. The future looks interesting. Scarecrow. Blood dripped from his blade in the light of the full moon. His mask, a white porcelain thing inscribed with more seals than he could count, clung tightly to his face. Swirls of deep blood red swooped up from its cheeks and to its beak. Twin large black circles mated its face. Intricate inks of green swirled around its face to create the illusion of feather. His black cloak was slick with blood and carried the deep metallic stench of death repeated again and again. Tonight had been a long one. A beam of thundering lighting lit the night blue and white as he jumped to the side, his Sharingan spinning in his skull simultaneously. His body was moving, acting, killing without him even being aware of it. Moments like this he became a machine, a harbinger of death. An earth just to devour the body before it hit the ground. More blood. The machine came down, and his body moved again. He was a machine. More blood. He wasn't Kakashi Hatake, failure. More blood. He was simply Scarecrow, the executioner. Scarecrow the mass murderer. Scarecrow the blood drinker and maker of widows. He dodged right, grabbed the arm and cut through it with pure lightning manipulation. There was a scream for half a second and then the knight went silent and his blade was in her throat. His jutsu ate her body once more. A flowing torrent of precious life essence, of lovely red-hued life ambrosia. He wasn't Kakashi Hatake, he was Scarecrow. He was Anbiyu. He was death, and like this, he didn't have to think. To feel guilty, to feel his failures. To feel the blood of Rin on his hands. Too busy with killing. His blade flashed in the night and a head was separated from its body. A cry. A distorted shout of pain. He was gone in an instant. He was Scarecrow, and no one died on his squad. He met Robin with a deep gash in her side, looking frantically for her opponent. Get your head out, you're but newbie, calm down. His own eyes were scanning now. Looking and looking. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Stupid Robin for getting cut with a lightning chakra-infused blade. Stupid him for coming to help her directly instead of flanking around and taking her opponent by surprise. Stupid Ivanji Cloud Jounin for not masking his chakra properly. He was gone in an instant, his foot meeting flesh in an overpowered shunshin. The Jounin grunted and grabbed the foot, but it was too late. He'd replaced himself with a Kagebunshin at the same instant his hit connected. It exploded, and the sound carried throughout the forest. He was dead. His blood splattered throughout the forest. Scarecrow looked left. Robin was still on the ground, her blood slowly pooling beneath her feet. He sighed. Rookie, that's a skin wound in this industry. Get your sheet together. Come on, you won't die. Ranger will patch you up. No one in Squad 1 has ever died, and I won't start with you today. Get your sheet together, get your butt up, and move. He extended a hand and she shakily grabbed it. Tenzo dropped down from the tree overhead. Scarecrow cast him. A look from behind his mask, twisted his hand in a series of twitches and the masked Anbiyu careened off. What the hell happened to you, rookie? How'd you let him get close enough to cut you, then lose him a few seconds later? Might as well paint a target on your back and walk around NDE for all good basic, did you? Rose dropped down as he berated Robin. She chuckled. Don't worry about it, rookie. Trust me. Senpai gets on all our buttes the first couple months. Especially after AF up. Fix her up, Rose? It'll take us a fortnight to get to Konoha if you don't. Kakashi. The blood dripped off him in a fast, harsh flow. The water seared his skin and no matter how much of the rough, cleansing soap he used, the scent of blood wouldn't leave his body. He scrubbed furiously, he always did. He hated the after-mission regret. No, not regret, the after-mission shame he felt. The complete feeling of dread that consumed him once his task was done. When he was on a mission, when he was Scarecrow, he became the mask. He became the machine that did his duty for Konoha. He wasn't Kakashi the failure. He wasn't Kakashi the weakling. He wasn't Kakashi who let his best friend die, and then killed the woman he loved just a few short years later. He wasn't Kakashi who promised to watch his sensei's son and then fled because he couldn't stand to look in those two blue eyes that looked far, 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 too much like his father's. During those times he was just Scarecrow. Just Scarecrow. He stepped out the shower with a bored look on his face, walked to his locker and put on his clothes. He sighed, and started his slow walk towards the Anbiyu barracks. His room was a Spartan thing, a concrete cell more than anything else tucked into the furthest back of the barracks. He lay on his thin futon and placed his blade in its holder on the far wall. His eyes gazed up at the bare concrete for an eternity before he fell asleep. The loud knock on his room door woke him up some time later. His eyes scanned the room once more. He grabbed his white porcelain mask and slipped it on. His blade was on his back in a few moments, and he answered the door with the lackluster care he had become famous for. Scarecrow? Hi. Umbu number 0402005 Alpha? Hi. The tall gray-masked Anbiyu dropped the red scroll in his hand. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. A summons from the Sandaime. When he looked back up, the gray-masked Anbiyu was gone. He looked back at his bare cell, looked down once more at the red scroll in his hand, and felt a wave of nausea rush over him. Too soon. It was 2 soon. The Sandaime sat behind his desk when he appeared in his office in a cloudless shunshin. The old man, the monster on the battlefield in the guise of a grandfather, looked up from his task to look at him. His eyes were kind and soft, but his face was stern, and Kakashi felt his heart drop even more. Scarecrow, remove your mask. His breath itched in his throat. An ANBU was never to remove his mask on duty. The Hokage was never to ask an ANBU to remove his mask unless they were in war, or the ANBU in question was being dismissed. His time in ANBU was over with those 4 words. His time as Scarecrow was over. His heartbeat raced, his chest ached, and he wanted to scream, to plead and shout at the elderly Kage before him. But he couldn't. His pride stopped him, his will stopped him, and the stern hard look softened by those caring, deep brown eyes stopped him. He removed his mask, and the Sandaime took a long, deep drag of his pipe. Kakashi! That was it then. He was dismissed from ANBU. He's graduated Kakashi. Minato's child takes after his parents far too much. Sensei's child. Naruto. I'm not dismissing you from ANBU, Kakashi. I'm giving you a choice and asking of you a favor. The Sandaime stood up. He walked around his dark mahogany desk and stood in front of his windows. Naruto-kun has graduated, and with him 2 other youths that show quite the amount of potential and genius, though not quite up to him. I can't, Hyosama. I'm sorry. Killing intent silenced him. The old Kage took another deep drag of his pipe. He let the silence drag on, enjoying his tobacco and filling the room with its sweet, cherry smell. More killing intent, and he went quiet once more. His heart thumped in his chest. I need your help, Kakashi-kun. I'm unsuited for this. I had 3 such as them and I failed horribly. I may be old, but I am no fool. I learned from my mistakes. This team, Kakashi, will be great. I can feel it in these weary old bones. When they're older, they will be the primary powers in Konoha. Whoever teaches them now will also stand in a place such as this. I can see it, others can see it, and so the wolves will come from the shadows and try to place their maws on the now young and undefended pups. He sighed. When he spoke again, his voice was almost wistful. Then there's Naruto-kun. He's brilliant, Kakashi. Smart, hardworking, driven, attentive. Really attentive. He notices the looks people give him, yet he ponders it. I wouldn't doubt if he has some clue as to the true nature of who and what he is. That worries me, Kakashi. Can you imagine Minato's son, a prodigy, going against the village because of their fear and anger? Can you imagine him doing so except now with the might of the Kyuubi no Yoko at his control? And then there's the fact that it's now obvious to those looking that he is Minato's son. The similarities are too obvious. The other nations will take notice, and they'll move to remove him before he becomes a danger. The longer they wait, the more dangerous he becomes. Sensei's son. I need someone I can trust not to take advantage of him. I need someone I can trust not to hurt him and to steer him and his entire team of little geniuses in the right directions. Down the path of the will of fire. I need someone I can trust to protect them with their lives. I need you, Kakashi, I do. But it's up to you to make that choice. I can't make it for you. He stepped back from the window and sat in his seat. His eyes looked at Kakashi, deep, dark, gray pools that stared at him with anticipation. Team assignments is in 2 days. You have 24 hours to decide. If you decide to turn down my offer, I'll return you to ANBU and you can continue your career unmolested by me. Dismissed. Naruto. Team assignments had never had him more nervous. He was sure they wouldn't split them up, but then again he was going in blind now. He'd changed the timeline drastically, graduated as early as possible and dragged Sakura and Sasuke with him. He was sure they would get political pressure from the Uchiha, the Hokage, and Sakura's mother to push them together, he hoped. So, at 8 in the morning with the dew still on the grass, he sat in an oversized desk watching the nameless Chunin in the front of the class call out names with his breath held and his stomach in a vice. Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto. He breathed, Uchiha Sasuke, and Haruno Sakura. Team Sensei, Kakashi Hatake? He seemed confused at the last part, looked up at the 3 small children in seats meant for preteens and clicked his tongue. Naruto smirked and leant back into his seat. You were right. Sasuke seemed impressed. I was. So. Sasuke dragged the sound on. So. What's our sensei like? He seemed annoyed and Naruto couldn't help but to laugh. What makes you think I know? You always know. Now stop being a JRK and just tell us, Naruto. Sakura whispered in his ear. She seemed as annoyed as Sasuke was and that caused him to sigh. He'll be a little late. Once everybody leaves, the best thing we can do is go get lunch and come back. Maybe take a little nap too. Lunch and a nap? That sounds like more than a little late. It won't be too late in comparison to how he usually is. He looked up. Senseis were already arriving and leaving with their students. Let's go get lunch and then we'll head back. Lunch was decent enough, though the conversation kept coming back to their soon-to-be sensei. Sasuke and Sakura were reasonably worried, and in truth so was he. They re-entered the classroom, and only one more team was left. They cast a look at the team and sat down themselves. A few minutes later, a dark-haired jounin arrived and took them away, his face flushing and looking slightly embarrassed. An hour later, Kakashi arrived. Naruto sensed him just as he entered the academy building. His chakra was a familiar presence he'd never be able to forget. He's here. Sakura seemed set off. He's also more than 2 hours late. Ma, sorry about that. I got a little lost on the way. She shrieked, and they turned to the source of the voice. I'm Kakashi, your jounin sensei. Meet me on the roof. Kakashi. In truth, Kakashi Hatake was late because returning ANBU equipment was a bureaucratic nightmare. The process, which involved 12 pages of paperwork that had to be in triplicate of all things, was a tedious one, designed to be as asinine, slow, and hard as possible to give the weak-hearted or lazy enough time and opportunities to just quit and return to the service. So he had been late, but not as much as his team had thought. He'd arrived just as they'd left for lunch, so he'd followed them. They worked well together, spoke and bantered like old friends. Moved like a shinobi team in the basic arrowhead formation with Naruto as the lead. He'd then watch them in their classroom, slowly doing things to see if they'd notice his presence. After slowly raising his chakra signature for an hour, Naruto had finally noticed him. Still, after watching them, he'd come to one conclusion. They were adorable. In the same way wolf pups were adorable. Small things, but still they had razor-sharp fangs, and while they drank milk now, soon they'd be tearing the flesh from live people. He wasn't one to fall for the normal trappings of small children, but looking down at them, regardless of how he felt, he couldn't help but to recognize exactly how cute they were. Especially Sensei's son. On top of the academy building, his spiky blonde hair glistened like silken gold. His bright sky-blue eyes seemed to shine with determination and intent. He had a serious look on his face that came off more as a pout than anything due to his small feature. I'm Kakashi Hatake, you will refer to me as Kakashi-sensei. Introduction are awkward, don't you think? So let's get this over with. Tell me your likes, dislikes, dreams, and one interesting thing about you. He looked all three of them over. His mind already reeling with ideas. How was he to train them? How was he to protect his sensei's son? How was he to get them ready for life as hired killers? You blondie, start. We already know everything about each other, sensei. Why don't you start? Did you say something? The deadpanned look they sent at him could have killed. He chuckled and let the silence settle. They shifted uncomfortably. People were always disturbed by the silence. He was gauging their personalities, starting to see what made them tick already. He heard a muttering of a-hole under the boy's breath before he started. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, my friends Sakura and Sasuke. My dream is to get strong enough to protect my friends no matter what. Something interesting about me? Well, I'm a time traveler. So he had taken after Kushina's sense of humor. Now you pinko. Her annoyance increased, but she took a deep calming breath and spoke. My name is Sakura Haruno, not Pinko. She spit out his little nickname like it was profane. I like my friend Naruto and Sasuke, and training with them. I dislike late people. My dream is, I don't know, but I want to be strong like them. I don't want to be left behind. One interesting thing about me is that, I guess I don't have any interesting things either. Don't feel down, Sakura-chan. You're plenty interesting. Thanks. They were close. He could tell, and it seemed like Naruto was the glue holding them together. Finally, the ugliest duckling. They reminded him of his old team, and the same time they didn't. They worked together better, they were actually friends, and in truth he couldn't tell who the him of this team. They were different. They were what his team should have been, could have been had Obito no died. Had he not been forced to kill Rin, had Sensei not lost his life sacrificing his son to save his village. I'm Uchiha Sasuke, my life are my friends and training, my dislikes are so far miso ramen. He heard Naruto mutter blasphemy. The color orange, another cry of dismay from Naruto, and normal tomatoes. My dream is to get strong to make my family proud and protect my friends. One interesting thing about me, well, I'm the only one that can keep our brilliant idiot in check. That's not true. Not one can keep me in check. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. This wasn't so bad, he decided. And looking at Naruto didn't tighten a vice around his chest like it used to, it was looser now. More manageable. Looking over the three, his mind reeled. They would pass the second genin test, it was so obvious he debated giving it to them at all. But still, the paperwork, if he didn't, he decided against it. You're not quite genin yet, you have a second genin exam you must take. If you fail you will be sent back to the academy. He doubted he'd phase them. What was one more year of the academy to a bunch of 7-year-olds? Graduating at 7 or 8 was still a great achievement. The test has a 66% failure rate. Meet me at training grounds 7 tomorrow morning at 600 hours sharp. Don't be late. And I suggest you don't eat anything or you'll be throwing up. He gave them a wide once-over, smirked a little to himself and stepped on the rooftop railing. See you then. He leaned back and fell off. Best to leave a little mystery for them. He landed on the ground without a sound. He looked back up to see the three of them walking down the walls with deadpan looks on their face. That's not going to impress us, Sensei. Naruto really was like a combination of Minato and Kushina. Dashida. Secrets were her trade. She was an old woman, born near the founding of Konoha. She'd had her brother die in the first shinobi was when she was a genin, fought in the second shinobi war, had her daughter killed in the third. She'd seen all the Kage come and go. She knew all of Konoha's dirty little secrets, its deep shadowy deeds. She was old and knew, and would always know until the day she died. But still she loved her village, she would have died for her village, and had gone out and nearly done that more times than she could count on both hands. She was the head librarian. It was not a prestigious position, it had no great pay, you received no honors, and you worked as late and as hard as the Hokage. It had to be done though, and she was happy to do it. As head librarian though, she noticed when things went disturbed in any of her library. Normally this would cause her concern. Anyone gaining unauthorized access to any of the shinobi library was a concern. Normally, but this was a special case. She'd always had a soft spot for Namikaze Minato. The boy had spent years in the shinobi archives studying jutsu theory and seal mechanics. He'd been a bright boy, a brilliant shinobi, and a monster on the battlefield. His son seemed to take after him, taking scrolls on chakra theory and control, copying them down or memorizing them before returning them to the library. She let him believe he was getting away with it as long as he took nothing dangerous, and returned the scrolls in the same place and location that he found them. Normally she would look away, but this time she was forced to take action. No 6-year-old should be taking a scroll on seal theory, even introductory seal theory. So, with the ease of years of training, she followed the boy until he entered an alleyway that was relatively secluded. She realized he was leading her there, so then he knew he was being followed by her. She smiled, he was very good for someone so young. Ah, Naruto-kun, may you and I have a word? He looked at her, his face one of caution. His left hand was on lower to his waist, ready to draw and throw a kunai in a second. She raised an eyebrow at that. Freshly minted genin shouldn't be that paranoid no matter how skilled they were. The paranoia of shinobi life came with experience. Dashida-san? Why are you following me? His voice seemed innocent enough, and had she not known the mind beneath such words, she would have been swayed to believe he was an ignorant child. Come on Naruto-kun, don't play that game with me. I've let you take what you please so far because none of it has been particularly dangerous. But seal theory, you're 7 years old child. You're a little too young to start with such things. I'd be foolish not to take it back from you. His blue eyes looked at her, scanned her, then he changed. Or his eyes did. Dashida-san, please. I need this scroll. His voice came out cool and slow. His eyes looked at her calculatingly. She shivered, she'd those eyes on his father. They're dangerous. Only to a fool, Dashida-san. Do I seem like a fool? No, he didn't seem like a fool. She'd always seen him as a smart but fun-loving child. But looking at him now, she realized she hadn't quite grasped the intelligence hidden there. She had sinking feeling she wasn't quite grasping all of it still. His eyes bore into her, he seemed to peel her back layer by layer. Blue, deep, deep blue like a frozen barren ice field. Naruto-kun, give me back the scroll. He looked at her once more. Seemed to contemplate something, then those cold hard eyes changed back. And a soft blue sky was left. Okay, Dashida-san. He put out his hand, rolled up his shoulder. And she had to force herself not to show any surprise. A seal was written on his shoulder, a small thing. He bit his thumb, ran blood over it, and in a puff of smoke the scroll was back in his hand. He handed it to her. I'm sorry, Dashida-san, it won't happen again. His words said one thing, but the hidden message was obvious. I'm already beyond that scroll. I don't need it. She looked at his and frowned. How long? How long had he been dabbling in things so dangerous? A few months. She was old and nothing surprised her. But a few months, and already he was capable of writing and shrinking seal matrices. Not only that, but space-time seal matrices. That took normal people years. His own father had taken a year just to get to that state, and the boy had taken a few months. On one hand, a talent like that couldn't be ignored. It couldn't be wasted. She'd have to talk with the Hokage. A few months, huh? She held the scroll in her hand, rolled it over his calloused palms and wrinkled flesh. She couldn't stop looking at him. Couldn't stop staring at him. She handed the scroll back to him. Before you take any more material on Fuinjutsu, come and consult me. She looked down at him, then sighed. You're a troublesome little boy, you know that? Am I? He was a cheeky little bastard. Sakura. Dawn was an eerie time in Konoha. Only shinobis and merchants moved around before dawn, doing their best to ready themselves for the oncoming day. The streets of Konoha seemed empty, strangely devoid of life. It unsettled her, it seemed somewhat unnatural, and so she moved through above the rooftops as fast as possible. Using little amounts of chakra to leap from building to building as her legs weren't long enough yet. The village passed beneath her in slowly but steadily, and soon it passed away altogether and the thick shrubbery of the Konoha forests surrounded her. She found them sat beneath a tree in the far left corner of the training grounds. Their heads were buried in scrolls, and occasionally they'd take some food from a bento box that Sasuke's mother had no doubt prepared. Naruto sensed her fist. He looked up, his sky-blue eyes seeming to glow in the dim light of the pre-dawn time. Sakura-chan! He leapt up in one great bound and had crossed the distance between them in seconds. Naruto was unfairly fast. You're early too. Yeah. I figured Sensei would be angry if I was late, so I wanted to come early. Just in case. Why don't you come and eat with us? Sasuke's mom cooks the best food ever. Come on. Saying no to Naruto was like asking the sun no to shine, or be hot. You could do it all you want, but in the end both the sun and he would continue doing what they wished. She was too nervous to eat, but surrounded by Naruto and soon Sasuke, she meekly slid the food past her mouth. It tasted wonderful. She grabbed more quickly, and then so did Naruto. Then Sasuke as well. Before she knew how the three of them were desperately slapping each other's chopsticks out of the way in an attempt to grab food. To think you three would be so hungry so early in the morning. She jumped in her skin, she hadn't even realized that their sensei was there. Out of the corner of her eye she watched as Naruto popped the last of the food in his mouth with a gleeful whoop of joy. He looked over them like a tree, tall and lank. His eyes seemed curious, and everywhere he looked he seemed to be analyzing them. Oh well. He pulled out bells from his back pocket and a small sundial. When the shadow of the dial reaches 12, this test is over. Your test is to take these bells. Those who have them at noon will pass and become genin, and those who don't fail and return to the academy. His eyes were hard as steel as he spoke, and she shivered as a coldness she'd never felt pressed down on her. Come at me with the intent to kill, or you won't pass this test. Kakashi-sensei looked up at the dawn sky. The sun had inched its way forward while they had waited for her. Now hues of rich red mixed and blended to create a bandana of colors across the sky, reds and blues and purples. Begin. She rushed off, disappearing into the underbrush. Her small legs pushed her as hard as she could. She ran into the forest a few feet. Then suddenly she aimed, jumped, planting her feet on a tree and rushing to its canopy. From the treetops she looked down at the training grounds. Naruto hadn't hidden himself. In fact, he hadn't moved at all. He stood there impassive, looking at his sensei. They seemed to be talking and she strained to hear what they said. You know, you should be hidden, right? Her sensei's voice seemed disappointed in him. I know. He didn't seem to notice or care about their sensei's tone. But what's the point? We're fresh academy graduates, not even genin yet. You're a jounin. Even if we hid the best we could, you'd find us in seconds, even if you are a shitty censor. She cursed, dropped from the tree, and found a place even deeper in the forest. Naruto was buying them time. She had to meet up with Sasuke. As she raced through the underbrush, she could still hear their distant voices. So you plan to face me head-on? No. Naruto answered like Kakashi had stated something incredibly stupid, for no particular reason. That's even stupider. I can't fight you, you're a jounin. You said we had to get the bells, you never said how. So, may I please have a bell? The silence seemed to go on forever, only being broken by her heavy breathing. She took calming deep breaths. She needed to stay quiet. She needed to find Sasuke. As she ran, she thought over the problems her sensei had given her. Who was to get the bells, assuming they could even get them? Their sensei seemed to actually think the idea over for a few seconds. I'm sorry. You'll have to get it the hard way. Naruto and Sasuke deserved them, but would they take it if she couldn't come with them? She doubted it. Naruto wouldn't, and Sasuke was just as chivalrous beneath his cold veneer. She'd have to convince them then, she decided. They'd be a good two-man team. She stopped suddenly as a thought struck her. There were no three-man genin teams in Konoha. There were three-man chunin teams, four-man genin teams, a mixtures of others and apprenticeships. If a teammate died, a team was forestalled from missions until a replacement could be found unless it was wartime. Oh, well, it didn't hurt to try. Then there was an explosion so loud it made her deaf for a few seconds. She had to find the boys. There was more to the test. Naruto. Explosive tags were the simplest seals to make. They were also one of the hardest to modify. Any half-wit with enough time, a good eye, a steady hand, and some few in paper could make an explosive tag. The seal matrix wasn't compressed and packaged very tightly. What you saw was what you got, due to the nature of an explosive tag. Simply put, they were pure energy converters. You put down a chakra storage component, you put down a pathway matrix, you put down a kinetic energy and heat energy converter right at the center. You pumped in chakra and it worked. Chakra was stored, then sent in the pathway matrix, then converted, and converted, and converted until the seal exploded in a flash of heat, fire, and pure kinetic energy. But you didn't need to modify an explosive tag if you made bigger storage and conversion units, then compressed them down and placed them in the matrix. From his lookout point in a tree 15 yards away from their sensei, he watched as his clone. It was a mud clone, a technique he'd made sure that Anbu had seen him practicing after seeing it and reading some theory. It was a piece of crap, the clone. Barely working, only able to take his shape and hold the basest of conversations. Before their sensei had came, he'd made it, slapped it with explosive tags, and hinged it into him. Kakashi-sensei had of course noticed the henge, but had either decided to let him try his tricks, or thought nothing of it. It was likely the first rather than the latter. As soon as his clone had exploded, he had moved. The fireball having reaching up a good 10 feet and creating a 5-foot wide and 3-foot deep crater in its wake. He set out to find his team, a small smirk on his face. He could sense Sasuke, His chakra was like a cool night breeze and he'd spent so much time next to the boy it was like second nature. Finding Sakura would be harder. She'd gotten really good at suppressing her signature over the past year. While he and Sasuke had worked on increasing their supplies and gaining rudimentary control over them, Sakura had instead focused on increasing feats of control. She could already water walk and cast jutsus at the same time, something he and Sasuke still struggled with despite a month of training. He'd have to get her more exercises soon. Sasuke was 12 yards away. He'd crossed a stream that looped around the training ground and feed into its small lake to mask his scent better. He seemed to be moving towards him too, which meant Sakura would be able to sense them. Once they got together, he estimated a few minutes before Kakashi-sensei would intervene. The man had changed from what he remembered. No, that wasn't it. The man hadn't yet changed into what he remembered. From what he could tell, his sensei was fresh from Enbyu. The scent of blood hung to him. His nonchalant attitude had seemed forced, an act more than anything else. A very good act, but he'd seen the man as he really was, and it was easy to tell when his memory was so vivid. He sighed. 2 yards away from Sasuke, and he could finally sense Sakura-chan. He could see his black-haired friend and teammate already. Sasuke twisted his head just as he and Sakura arrived. The test isn't about the bells. Sakura called out as she landed. There's something we're missing. There are no 3-man genin teams. It's about teamwork. He answered. They turned to him. It's about seeing if we can work together to get something done, or at least try. Sasuke looked at the two of them. You too. You're the only two my age I ever feel stupid around, you know that? He smirked back. It's okay, Sasuke. I won't tell anyone else you're stupid. It'll be our little secret. Sasuke gave him a wicked look and turned back. He laughed and heard the muted laughter of Sakura with him. If he wasn't teamwork, let's show him what we can do. Kakashi. They were planning something. His cute little wolf pups. The 3 of them were huddled away from him, a good 20 yards away, a decent distance at least. That far away, and a Chunin who wasn't aware of himself wouldn't even know they were there. They did pretty okay job at hiding their chakra. He sat in a tree branch, his chakra pulsing every few minutes to give them a slight hint as to where he was. It was barely a flicker, but Naruto seemed to be somewhat decent at sensing. That mud clone hinged as Naruto had been a slick move. He'd known it was a distraction, but he hadn't expected the explosive tags though. In truth, Kakashi had never thought a 7-year-old would be able to get his hand on explosive tags. He'd have to find out where the boy got them. Those things were dangerous, and a good bit powerful than normal it would seem. He wanted some. They were moving now. Little flames of chakra bolting through the forest. They'd found him, and a few minutes later sections of the forest started to go up in a massive explosion. He'd sked in annoyance. As sensei, it would be his duty to pay for any large-scale damage to the training grounds that happened while his students were still genin. Thump, thump, thump. A staccato of explosions that echoed like firecrackers. Large, expensive firecrackers. He moved, they wanted to draw him out, so be it, he'd go to them. He appeared in front of Naruto in a blur. His foot was in motion before the boy even knew he was there. He had to hold back to keep from caving in his little chest. But he'd be feeling that for a good week following this. He disappeared again, and met Sasuke with a backhand only to pull back as a kunia flew past his head. When he spotted a flicker of red, he replaced himself with a log and launched himself at Sakura. The girl replaced herself with a large log as soon as she saw him moving. They were fast, he could give them that. Even more kunia came, this time from both Sasuke and Naruto. He dodged a few, but when he spotted the light reflecting of the thin ninja wire, he clicked his teeth in annoyance. He started to knock the kunai aside, but after a 5-1 exploded in his face and he had to shushin back. They'd almost had him. A thin line of blood from shrapnel dripped down his face. The tree he was standing on exploded, and he had to replace himself once more. He jumped back suddenly as a pink blur zoomed past him. Her arm aimed for the bells, but he knocked it aside, and cursed when he felt the familiar sensation of an active exploding tag in his hands. He flicked it away in time for twin black and blonde blurs to zoom at him. He heard a roar of Katen, Gokaku no Jutsu, and cursed. Stupid boy, his teammate was in the way. The black blur was replaced with a raging inferno, and he jumped to the left, grabbing Naruto with him. He looked down and realized the boy wasn't there, and the bells were gone. He looked up and saw the tired forms of his new genin team. Small smirks on their little faces. "Sensei, we got them." "Ma, you did. But who gets the bells?" Sasuke smirked, and Naruto and Sakura laughed. He had to suppress his own smile. They weren't like his old team. They were better, far better. "The bells don't matter, that wasn't the test," said Sakura. Sasuke picked up where she left off. "It was about teamwork. The bells were a distraction." "You're right, I guess you passed then." He stopped and looked at the sky. It was approaching noon. "Let's go get lunch to celebrate." "It's on me." He looked around at the semi-ruined training ground. That would be on him as well. This wasn't so bad, he decided. He still missed being Scarecrow, but as he was now, maybe he could make up for his failures. He looked at his new team, his cute little pups, smiling and laughing and making jokes. He almost didn't miss being Scarecrow. Hell Month was a tradition in ANBU. It was a solid month of harsh, grueling physical training and mental hazing of new recruits. Kakashi very much believed in Hell Month. It weeded out the weak, marked the strong, and acted as a bind the masks together in brotherhood. So with this belief, Kakashi set out to put his cute little genin through a Hell Month of his own. He was sure they hated him. The skies above him were hued a deep rich gray, and a cool breeze drifted through the forests of Training Ground 7. His sole uncovered eye trailed his sweating genin as they finished their laps. Their chests heaved up and down in desperate need oxygen. Their legs quivered with exertion and, finally, Sakura collapsed in exhaustion, no longer able to continue. Naruto and Sasuke stopped, picked her up with their hands and carried her on their shoulders for another 2 laps before Sasuke collapsed as well. He waited for Naruto to run another 3 laps before he called for a stop. Then Kakashi leapt down from perch and landed without a noise. "You 3 did well. Though I think more laps may in order." They groaned in dismay. He looked at them, his deep brown eyes scanning over their small forms. They seemed absolutely exhausted. "Sensei, can we please take a break?" He acted as if he was thinking it over, then his eyes roamed over to them. "It depends, how much do you value your lives?" They seemed a little confused and a little scared as well. His eyes looked up at the approaching clouds. It would start to rain soon. The light gray sheet of clouds had turned darker, far, far darker. It would seem training would end early today. "You 3 are at a huge disadvantage. You're children in the world of teens and adults. You don't have the reach and stamina of grown adults, you won't have the chakra capacity, you don't have the physical strength and endurance." He sighed. "In short, even if you are skilled, against older opponents your age and your size are your biggest weaknesses. My sensei taught me this when I was your age. In order to be as physically fit as possible, you can't be average or even above average. Mentally you're geniuses, physically that's what I'm trying to change. But even if you reach the peak of the physical limit you can currently reach, you'd still need more. You need equalizers." He stopped to pull out a kunai. "Weapons are one of those equalizers. When I was a child I had my father's chakra blade. It didn't make the battlefield level, but it did make the slope less steep. It saved my life more than a few times. These will do the same." They used the kunai to make a small cut on his thumb. He ran the bloody digit over the back part of his psalm and unsealed a scroll. He unfurled it and white smoke puffed up. 3 weapons now lay on the scroll surface. A short sword, just barely a foot and a half in length, made of dark gray matted metal. It was double-bladed, its hilt made of a rich dark obsidian-colored wood. Next to it was a pair of gloves, thick leather-bound things with hardened ball of the same matte metal on the knuckles and inscribed with a light patchwork of seals. Lastly, a brush set and 2 more scrolls and a set of double-length kunai that also had the same metal. "The other is chakra." He stopped to take a breath. Chakra and steel, those are the great equalizers in the ninja world. His eyes went back to the sky. The gray was all-consuming now. A deep dark hue, which not filled the sky and left nothing behind. The scent of rain filled the air. "These are for you." He picked up the sword and handed it to Sasuke. "Kenjutsu seems like it would sweet you." The blade is double-edged and made of hyper-conductive chakra metal. It's capable of channeling both normal and elemental chakra. He picked up the gloves and one of the scrolls and handed them to Sakura. Physically speaking, you're the weakest of 3 of you, Sakura. That's nothing against you, you train just as hard as your teammates, but there are physical limits you just can't overcome, at least not yet. These gloves create a bastardized version of Tsunade-sama's strength technique. It's nowhere near her mountain-crushing strength, but it will give your opponents a surprise. The scroll is filled with genjutsu theory and a few beginner techniques. Your chakra control is almost perfect. Use it your advantage. He turned to Naruto last. The boy seemed expectant and excited. You shouldn't be messing around with Fuinjutsu, Naruto. The blonde brat smiled in response. But I don't think I can say anything to change that. So here. He tossed the scroll towards the boy. That's intermediary Fuinjutsu theory. Before you try and put anything into place, please come and see me. I don't want you to accidentally kill yourself trying to create something. The brush set and ink are chakra conductive. Careful. I can't stress that enough. The kuniya are chakra conductive as well. They're double standard length and meant for close-quarter combat. They sat in silence. A thunderous crack roared and he looked up. Distant hints of lighting could be seen against the now black sky. Let's go get lunch. Sartobi. The scent of sweetened tobacco filled the room. It was harsh and pungent, a duopoly and damp and dusky tobacco, and sweet burnt fruit that mixed and overpowered the smells of everything it touched. It was a decent blend, and went down smooth as he took deep breaths and let it fill his lungs to the brim. His eyes looked at the blonde boy that seemed rather bored sitting before him. Over the past year he'd spent unknown hours contemplating the blonde before him, wondering exactly how the boy would take the news when he finally revealed it to him. He'd expected anger, rage, depression, and sadness. In truth, he hadn't known what to expect, but he'd know it would be emotional. Yet the boy before him could seem to care less. The revelation of his status as Demon's host had elicited no response. Nothing. I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation, Naruto-kun. The blonde child smiled back at him and took a deep sip of his drink. I do. And yet you don't seem to care. It's hard to act like I do when I really don't. The boy's eyes peered into his own. I'm not blind, Ji-san. Do you know that the seal appears when I funnel chakra? He had in fact not known that. The Sandame suddenly found himself wondering how something as simple that had gone unnoticed by his embu. People have never liked me. I've noticed that for a while. Other kids won't play with me, merchants give me mean looks and try to scare me away when I approach their stands. The matron at the orphanage seemed to not care about anything that happened to me at all. At first I figured it was something I did, you know? Maybe I was bad and that's why people didn't like me. So I tried to act good, and I was good and no one cared. He stopped and took a breath. Guilt started to build up in him, and he forced himself to take a good hard look at the young boy. Then I figured it was something my parents did, you know? Maybe they did something so horrible that people were mad at me because they couldn't be mad at them, but I tried to look and I couldn't find anything on them. He stopped and took a breath. So I figured it was something else? You know, something I couldn't know about, and I hated that. I hated not knowing, and for a while I was angry. But then, his large blue eyes stared out the large open windows. He seemed lost in thought for a few moments. How long have you known? The boy before him wasn't the happy-go-lucky child he'd seen multiple times over the past year and a half. It was the boy he'd only had glimpses of before, the boy Yoshino had seen, and Kakashi had suspected was there. It was the other face of Uzumaki Naruto, and a sense of dread started to fill the Hokage. Memories of his old student flitted into his mind. A few months, once I started working on storage seals and realized that you could store chakra. That chakra was a form of energy and that energy cannot be destroyed. It didn't take a lot. To store the QB you'd need a really complex seal. The seal on my stomach is insane. I've tried reading it, and I'm barely able to comprehend the structure. The whisker marks on my cheeks, the villagers' hatred, the fact that I was born on the same day the QB was supposedly killed. It's not hard to figure out, Ji-san. I was angry for a while, angry I'd been chosen, Angry people hated me for nothing I had control over, angry for the injustice of it all. But I just stopped being angry, and when I did I realized I didn't care anymore. The villagers aren't important. I don't care what they think. My friends are nice to me despite the villagers. All I need is them and I'm fine. He digested the boy's words. Naruto had known for a while, but even before then he'd known people hated him, had come to a conclusion that made sense with what little information he had. Not for the first time in his life, the Sandaime found himself wondering if what he was doing was the right thing. Again today he felt as if he was wrong, as if in the future he'd be regretting the choices he made this instant. Naruto-kun, sometimes leaders must make hard decisions. The Yandere made one in making you a Jinchuriki. Sometimes leaders make mistakes as well, even when trying to do good. He left it open that he was speaking about himself. The boy nodded that he understood and he sighed. I can't undo what has been done. I know. Naruto-kun, wait. Please. He looked back at the Sandaime. The boy seemed calm, not even perturbed in the slightest by all of this. If anything, he seemed sad, maybe even felt pity. He would have laughed had it not been so sad. A child feeling pity for an old man who had done him wrong. He sighed. I want you to know that if you have any questions, if you ever feel like you need to speak with someone, I'm here. Naruto stopped on his way to the door. His small childish frame freezing. He turned around, blue eyes suddenly intense. I'll keep that in mind, GG. He closed the door and walked out the room. The Sandaime leaned back in his seat and took a deep, long drag from his pipe. His tobacco was almost gone. Naruto. Sensei, can we please go on a mission? It's been more than a month. His childish voice was as shrill as he could make it. He saw the almost unnoticeable flinch Kakashi did at the sudden sharp sound. He smiled, his eyes beaming with glee. The sun stood behind him, casting his blonde locks with a light halo. He twirled the chakra-sensitive blades Kakashi had given him on one of his fingers. Kakashi cast him a look of earnest confusion, and he sighed in annoyance. His sensei was too good of an actor. He turned to Sasuke and Sakura. They seemed to share his sentiments. You think you're ready for missions? We know we're ready? Do you now? His eyes had a look and the three of them shuddered. Kakashi was a SLV driver. No, this Kakashi was a SLV driver. This Kakashi was fresh out of NBU and still had a host of problems to his name. His Kakashi had years to deal with his problems, years to calm down and vent and process his emotions. He liked his better, he always would, but this Kakashi was a better teacher overall. An SLV driver. We do. He held the confidence in his voice. He wouldn't be turned down. Well, there was a sudden pressure on him, like he'd suddenly become aware of exactly how heavy gravity could be. Next to him, Sasuke and Sakura were doing their best to stay standing. Kakashi's voice was like ice, a barren snow field that held no warmth, only the harsh touch of cold, and a slow frozen death as mercy. Okay. And the pressure was gone. Kakashi's wide smile could be seen even beneath his mask. Follow me. They did. After a few minutes of light jogging, the small form of Team 7 appeared before the mission office. Without so much of a word, Kakashi pushed them in and the room became silent. Coincidentally, the Hokage sat behind his seat in the mission office today. It brought back memories of his first time in the mission office. It seemed like forever ago, even if it hadn't happened yet. Team 7 reporting for first mission posting, Hokage-sama. Kakashi seemed too happy, and he could tell it was making Sakura and Sasuke nervous. He turned to them, flashed a smile, and they smiled back. All would be well. Good. The elderly Kage smiled. There are currently 4 open mission choices. All D ranks, of course. Uprooting weeds from a garden. Walking the new Inuzuka clan Ninken. Babysitting. Or helping the construction camp moves material for the day. Pay grade is rated at 150 yen for all activities. Kakashi looked at the 3. You'll be doing the work. You decide what you wish to do. He promptly turned around and let them talk amongst themselves. Naruto took the chance to look at his young friends. I think we should take gardening. That seems like the most boring of them all. Sasuke chimed in. No. He's right, Sasuke-kun. Think about it, babysitting? We're 6. No kids would take us serious even with these. She pointed to the headband around her head. It glistened in the sun. And the Inazuka clan Ninken will be worse than any little kids we're going to be babysitting. Plus they get big as hell and strong as hell. I've seen them drag around their partners before. I mean, gardening's the most boring, but it's our best option. Sasuke nodded and looked up. We'll take gardening, Hokage-sama. Ah, good choice. The Hyuga gardens are rather beautiful at this time of year. Come on you 3, let's get going. Kakashi grabbed Sasuke and Sakura by the scruffs of their shirts and lightly kicked him in the bottom. Where's the rest, you're thinking, aren't you? Well, this would be longer, but I'm in a slump and barely feel like doing anything. Let alone writing. Over the past 2 weeks I've opened up this chapter and just stared at it for 15 minutes only to say F and roll out of my comp chair into bed. That's happened at least twice a day for the past nearly 2 weeks. I just don't feel it right now. I've been in a bad mood recently. Sorry. Hopefully next ones will be longer. This chapter even feels forced, you know? It was supposed to be twice as long and introduce Niji and Lee. Maybe next time. Sad face, ugh. I'ma go nap. You know what? I need you guys' opinions of this story I've been working on for like a year now. It's just the first chapter, but I want to know what you guys think. It's just an idea, but I can't get it out of my head. The East. Naruto. The village stank of the rancid smell of humans. It smelt of sheet, of PSS, of death and rotting meat. It was a rancid smell, a powerful overbearing odor that singed his nose and made him want to gee. For a moment, just an instant, he felt his stomach revolt, it twisted, and knotted itself, and his lunch almost came hurling back up, so foul was the stench. He wanted to curse, to think, to believe that people lived in poverty like this. He took shallow breaths, both to settle his stomach and limit the overbearing, unbelievably perverse smell. He turned sky-blue eyes to his mentor. The brown-haired man looked at him, an eyebrow arched in amusement. He seemed to be taking joy in Naruto's inability to keep his lunch. The smell. That's the smell of corruption, boy. That's what happens, the money and food that is taken from the people as taxes. He mocked the word, and yet, Naruto could sense the hatred and vehement anger behind his tone, is handed out to the lord and ladies instead of being used to fix the roads, repair the sewers, keep the water running, pay the police force. His mentor laughed, his voice seeming loud, yet sounding small as he did so. Chengdu, 1, is one of the oldest cities within the divided West. It's nearly 1,000 years old. Legend says the first men were born not too far from Chengdu. When the great black egg containing heaven and earth split, and Pangu, feeling suffocated, escaped, releasing into the world all that is in it today. Though, I don't think anyone still believes in the myths. Naruto smiled. He loved it here, the legends, the myth, and the history. Seemingly everything here was ancient, everything had a story, and everything led back to another myth or legend or story. It was strange, this ancient yet new land. Strange to think a great ocean separated this world, this land, this continent from the one he was born on, and the one he fled from. Then his smile disappeared as the smell assaulted his nose once more. Chengdu is run by a local warlord called Jin Yunpeng too. He's a small-time warlord, his power barely reaches past the city limits. He's our first target. Naruto nodded in understanding, but still he pulled his dark brown cloak tighter around him, doing his best to conceal his face. Yellow hair was a rarity in these parts, blue eyes even rarer, especially this deep inland. The mainlanders barely had any contact with outsiders and traders, and very rarely did the children of NTMT knights reach this far inland. It wasn't impossible, but it was noteworthy enough for casual passerbys to remember his face. Legend says when Pagan broke the egg of the world and freed himself, he looked upon the desolation of the void and howled. Such was his anguish at the nothingness he saw. For an untold time he wailed in the nothingness until his tears fell on the egg of the world, and the rivers and seas formed. The leftovers of the egg formed the land. Seeing what he'd done, and created, pagans sought to bring about something in the nothingness. He made a great sacrifice. He pulled his eyes from his head, making the sun and the moon. From his skin the tapestry of the night was formed. From his bones was the stars birthed. From his blood life came into being. From his mind, man was formed. I don't understand. His brown-clad mentor laughed again. Pagans saw nothingness and realized how horrible it was, how wretched it was. Here there is nothingness in these slums. In these streets children starve, men rob and kills, women and girls sell their bodies. And the wealthy, the warlord and his lords, are uncaring or oblivious to it all. Here there is nothing, and from nothing came something. I still don't understand. He'd learned early on, unlike in Konoha, admitting he didn't understand was far better than wallowing in his own ignorance. The city is in desolation. The people, the common folk I mean, they go along with it only because things aren't too terrible yet. It may be bad, but in the scope of what they face. Before things are relatively good. Yet, as soon as things start to get worse the mob will rise in anger as they are wont to do. When the mob rise, the heads of the nobles fall. Some of the noble men understand and fear this. Yet they can do nothing. That's where we come in. Me and you, young and old. Lao Xing was a man well past middle-aged. His hair was turning gray, his skin starting to wrinkle and tan from the sun of the summer's day. He was unusually old in the divided West, well past 60, and showed his age, his knowledge, and descent from royalty. His eyes were a deep dark brown, and on his face he held, "The land is ripe for revolution, boy. And I think you could lead the way." Me? Yes, you. Naruto's response was an incredulous look. Lao Xing laughed again. You have aspirations for greatness, you're young, and a natural-born leader, even if you are rough around the edges. A hawk's cry drew Naruto and Lao Xing's perspective skyward. It circled high overhead, its massive wings tipping on clouds before circling and swinging about in an arch. It cried once more and Naruto noted Lao Xing's smile. Then a third time and Lao Xing chuckled in excitement. Close friends are hard to find, Naruto. A good friend is a friend for life, keep that in mind. He kicked his horse and it neighed in annoyance. Follow me. It swung its tail left, then right, before neighing once more. Zhao Shi bowed deep, to show her respect to her father as she poured the rich mint tea. The luxurious smell emitted from where she was. She placed a bowl filled with honey next to him, and bowed once more at him. Zhao, her father was once a strong man. She'd seen the old paintings from when he was young, nearly 30 years before a general beneath the golden steed. Back then he'd been a young man of only 20 years, his face had been strong, his eyes bright. Now though, those deep gray pits were tired, his hair was gray. Large bags and wrinkles marred a once smooth face. Thank you, daughter, your service is much appreciated. It is my pleasure, father. She hated this, the strict speech, the cold tone, the unfeeling nature with which he seemed to approach everything. It was hard to imagine he was the same man he had been when he was far younger, and she but a child. Back then he'd been kind, amiable, but it seemed that age had stricken him of his soft touch. She would have sighed, but in front of her father that would have been shameful. Instead she bowed once more at him and went back to kitchen to retrieve the platter of food the servants had prepared. She walked on hard, pale wooden floors, her feet carried themselves to the kitchen. There she saw servants, peasants really, hastily running about trying their best to prepare a meal for her father's unannounced guests. My lady! She turned to the voice that called her out. It was an old woman, her face wrinkled with age and her hair turning a deep gray. Like much of the staff here she was. Zhao Shi had to hold her tongue. She seemed surrounded by age and slow-coming progressive death. Yes. We're out of rice, my lady, we can't. Out of rice. She frowned at that. Her father had ordered 150 kilos of rice be delivered just the week before. What happened to shipment that was supposed to arrive 2 days ago? It never arrived. Were it permissible of a lady of her stature, she would have cursed. Instead she let out a long sigh. The old worker lady seemed scandalized by her behavior, but for now Zashi decided it best to ignore her. She had an idea of what had happened to the rice, and it angered her to the core. In the old days no one would dare steal from her father. In the old days though, her father had been a man not to be trifled with. No warlord was. But after the fall of the Jade Dragon, her father was lucky to keep what he had. She reached into her long flowing dress, pulled a money purse from beneath a small pocket covered by a piece of yellow cloth and counted out 30 golden coins. Go to the market with one of the boys. Buy 20 kilos of rice. Have them deliver it here today and cook it. Haggle hard and you can keep the difference. The old woman looked at the coins with a gleam in her eye. She would have pocketed some of it anyway, Zashi knew that, but giving her permission to do so would make sure she got a fair deal out of it. With a furl, Zashi left the kitchen and started the slow walk back to her father, how to break the news to him. She wondered idly as she walked back from the kitchen. As she approached, she stopped at the calm voices that spoke. It would seem misfortune had befallen them, and her father's guests had arrived. Zao, my old friend. That was not a voice she had ever heard before. Dare she sneak a look? Indeed she did. She peered around the corner and gasped at what she saw. He may have aged over the years, hair growing gray and old, wrinkles lightly appearing on and around his face, but still his jaw was strong, and his face devilishly handsome. The Jade Dragon. Of all people. Good to see you again, old friend. The same to you, Laoshing. The years have been kind to you, friend. It seems as if you haven't aged a day in the 20 rain seasons since we shared the danger of battle together. I wish I could say the same of you, Zao. It seems as if for every year I haven't aged, you've aged too, and aged them well. I'm quite jealous. I had dreams of stroking a long white beard when I was young. Now I'm old and dream of dreaming those dreams. I may look young, but do know I feel old. Her father laughed. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't heard her father laugh in years. It seemed as if the man had receded into himself, pulling back and back, putting up walls of ice and stone between the man she'd known as her father and the man he was now. It was a thing she'd almost forgotten he could do. Daughter. She'd been caught. Had they known she was there the entire time? My friends. Apprentice can be found waiting for his master in the kitchens. Show him around our humble abode. He might be a little strange, but remember that your actions reflect upon our family. As you wish, father. Her face flushed red as she walked to the kitchens. That had been tactless. The act of spying was unbefitting a lady, more so one of her status. Worse perhaps was getting caught in the act. She wondered idly what was so strange about the boy that her father would consider mentioning it. As she approached the kitchen, the mummers of the kitchen staff could be heard. The yammering women could be heard even from here. They seemed uncannily excited about something, and their excitement intrigued her. As she approached the kitchen, her anticipation built, until finally her stomach was queasy with a slight hint of unease. Was he perhaps grotesque? A monster of unspeakable hideousness? A beast parading as human, with sharpened claws for hands and a twisted, gnarled mouth. A thing covered in scars and skin like leather. Well, she'd know soon. Finally she reached the door that led to the kitchen. She paused for a moment, composed herself and slid the door open. He was not a monster, far from it. As far from as perhaps it was physically possible to be. His hair was golden sunshine. His eyes were captured skies. His face was handsome. For a moment her took her breath away. On his cheeks were 3 pairs of shallow scars that made him look wild when combined with his blonde spiky hair. Hello. His accent was Kur. Spoken in the manner of the port cities. So then that explained the hair, and the eyes, and those strange scars. Hello. Hayashi. The commotion drew him from his office. It was impossible not to notice, and had he ignored it would cast him in ill light within the clan. Not that the clan, at least the branch half of it, saw him in any good light recently. He walked briskly to the Hyuga Gardens. In springtime the flowers reached full bloom, filling the air with their fragrance and creating a stark contrast against the sharp white walls of the Hyuga compound. He could hear the argument now, and as he processed it, it drew a scowl to his face. Shut up. The voice was definitely not a Hyuga. No Hyuga, not even a child, would be so uncouth as to yell so loud in the clan compound. You're wrong. Fate cannot be changed. And that was Niji. A scowl came to his face. His nephew, so many mistakes made. So many regrets over the past few years. It didn't escape Hayashi, he escaped the fate of his brother by luck alone. It didn't escape him that his brother had been the more skilled, the more talented of them too, and it was only by chance, by happenstance that he was clan head. It was only by chance his children would inherit the position of clan head. Only by chance. It was also only by the love of his brother that he was still alive. Luck had been on his side since the day he was born. It had been luck that had let him be born first. It had been luck that his brother had been there to deflect that kunai that would have killed him on his first C-rank mission. It had been luck that his brother loved him enough to give his life for him to live on. Hayashi had loved his brother, and now, despite what the boy might think, he loved his nephew. He moved into the gardens as the last of these thoughts flighted into his mind. A blonde-haired boy was arguing with his nephew in the gardens. Niji seemed annoyed in that new cynical way he'd taken to things since his father's death. The blonde boy seemed even more so. His sky-blue eyes fierce and determined, an active scowl making his whiskered face look oddly fierce. Uzumaki Naruto. His eyes flicked around to find their Jounin-sensei, and sure enough the smiling visage of Kakashi Hatake could be found sitting in a tree watching the argument with apathy. Their eyes met, and Kakashi nodded, handing control of the situation over to him. Lazy bstrd. What seems to be the problem? The argument stopped when heard his voice. Niji looked up angrily, then down in apprehension when he saw the look of annoyance on his face. The Uzumaki boy seemed unperturbed by the entire thing. His blue eyes looked at him, staring at him with an intensity far, far, far beyond his years. He says I'm not going to be anything. He's not. He shouldn't be here anyway. Hayashi's eyes looked at the blonde, most notably the headband tied tightly around his forehead, pulling his wild spiky hair close to this skull. He turned back to his nephew and raised an eyebrow. He'd always been lucky, and it was luck that brought the Uzumaki boy and his team so close to him so early. Everyone had their eyes on Kakashi's Hataki's team. A squad of young geniuses. But no one knew exactly how good they were, how skilled they were currently, or how far they could reach. The three children before him could eventually become a new version of the Sannin. Nay, even more powerful than them. Everyone had their eyes on them, or would, if Kakashi Hatake let anyone close enough to observe. He has a headband. He's part of the genin team that was hired to weed the gardens. I don't know how the two of you came to find strife with one another, however. He turned to the tree where their sensei seemed to lounge, oblivious or uncaring of this all. He scowled, no doubt uncaring. Kakashi Hatake was too good of a ninja to miss much, if anything ever. If you wish to come to arms about it, we can go to the training grounds and you can spare to settle the matter. Kakashi leapt from the tree then. He had a masked smile on his face, but his eyes were cold like ice. Hayashi raised an eyebrow at the man. It would seem that wasn't quite as callous as he made himself out to be. The highly focused killing intent that now landed on him, and only him, was somewhat of a surprise as well. I'll do it. The blonde's eyes were hard as ice. Naruto, it's not good to be in the habit of fighting the clients. No, Kakashi-san, I think this would be a good learning experience for both my nephew and your students. Hayashi drawled out. He almost had to gasp for breath when the killing intent focused on him doubled. Kakashi's smile was gone, and now only ice-cold eyes stared at him. There was no pretense of friendliness in that face. Sensei, I think it's a good idea. I mean, all we do is spar each other. We need to fight other people our age, right? A voice not yet heard drew his attention. It was the pink-haired girl. Finally, the Uchiha chimed in as well. I want to see Naruto fight him. The three seemed to have reached a consensus. Kakashi Hatake was quiet for a moment, but then, finally relented. That would be a good idea, I suppose. And we have finished with the gardening. Kakashi's eyes remained focused on him and only him. Let's go to the training grounds. They arrived at the training grounds some 10 minutes later, and Hayashi could say he was somewhat excited. He wanted to see what the Hokage was trying to keep so secret. What exactly about this team did he do his best to keep away from the general public? At least for now. The Hyuga training grounds were empty when they arrived. Other than some mannequins marked with common tenketsu, all Hyuga children were forced to memorize. The Uzumaki boy seemed to be somewhat excited despite his anger. His chakra, there was so much of it for someone so young, spiked in anticipation and excitement. The two young boys went to the center of the training grounds while Kakashi's team and he watched from afar. Naruto, no explosives. Hayashi turned somewhat surprised, but the now pouty look on the blonde's face told him it wasn't a joke at his expense. The blonde pulled out a pair of kunai, double standard length and having the matte gray color of chakra-conducting metal. Then he twisted them in his hand. He took a tight, concise stand. Niji took the standard Hyuga Jukin form. It was perfect, his feet were firm and widely spaced. His arms were loose yet held in position. Begin! The Hyuga clan head called out. The blonde disappeared in a blur of speed, his form closing the distance between him and Niji. Chakra-enhanced speed, Hayashi realized. Of course the children on Kakashi's team were still just that, children. Not even teenagers. The only way they'd be able to face older opponents would be chakra-enhanced skills along with rigorous training. The gap closed before he could blink, and before Niji could react. The Uzumaki boy danced around Niji for a few moments, slashing and cutting with lightly before pulling away at the last second. Niji's chakra-enhanced palm was extended. The boy smirked and closed the gap again. He was fast, faster than Niji could react. Cuts, tiny little things started to appear all over Niji's body. It soon became apparent it was much less a spar and more a lesson in humility for his nephew. The Uzumaki boy was fast, and he was devastatingly effective with those kunai. Niji was losing. Naruto. Kakashi's voice was curt. The Uzumaki boy's speed doubled and the cuts stopped being shallow. They were deeper now, and Niji's cream white shirt was becoming pink with his blood. Naruto. Kakashi's voice was harder now, more steel backing it than ever. Finish it. Finish it, Uzumaki Naruto did. He stopped his dance around Niji and slammed the ringed handle of his blade into his nephew's head. Niji fell unconscious, and Hayashi sighed. He's quite skilled, wouldn't you say? He got no response from Kakashi Hatake. He looked at his unconscious nephew, leaned down and picked him in his arms. I believe the garden is adequately weed-free, Kakashi-san. You and your team may leave, but do stop by the kitchens and get yourself something to drink. It's rather hot today. My team is fine, Hayashi-san. Hayashi held back his tongue at such blatant disrespect. Sharingan no Kakashi was an A-ranked ninja for a reason. You may leave then. He grabbed his team by the shoulder, and they disappeared in a puff of smoke. Team 7. Sakura rolled under the swipe, swung her leg out as she recovered and brought her blonde-haired teammate to the ground. Naruto cursed as he fell, his world spun for a moment, then he felt the pressure of her legs straddling his chest. Sakura's fist smashed into his head like a hammer, and his snapped back, cracking against the ground. His world spun, his ears rang, and for a moment his vision went blurry. Another punch, and he heard a faint cracking sound as blood, hot rich blood dripped down his nose. A third punch, and he felt one of his teeth chip and mouth split. He swirled the blood with his spit into her eyes and brought a fistful of dirt up as well to accompany it. She leapt off him, her face a mask of anger. Then Sasuke came, a black blur that barreled into him, knocking him over. He replaced himself almost instantly, dodging the sword swipe. When the technique was finished, he was standing in the flat field of the training ground, watching his two teammates. His bleeding face looked at his two teammates, a small smirk on his face. He spit out more blood and raised an eyebrow towards the two of them. Sakura cracked her gloved fists, and Sasuke smirked. This is hardly fair. And your explosions are fair? Sakura seemed somewhat annoyed. Her hair was in disarray and had taken a perpetually singed look to it. All members of Team 7 perpetually smelled like chakra smoke now. He couldn't help but to smirk. His explosive notes had become somewhat of a matter of concern in Team 7. Yes. He made a hand sign and they disappeared in an inferno of roaring heat and explosive force, barely dodging to the left as a series of fireballs barreled toward his head. He felt a hand grabbing him and pulling him to the ground. Sakura loved her grapples. In the tree above, Kakashi watched with a keen eye. Over the past few months, in between the monotony and the odd D-rank his team had grown. He'd focused on practical combat, learning how to fight, and how to fight dirty. survive against tougher, stronger opponents just like his sensei had done to him. Naruto had taken to it like natural. Sasuke and Sakura had been hesitant too, but a few rounds of one-on-one with Naruto and they too had adopted it. But with their growth the interest of the politicos had grown as well. Word of the spar between Hayashi's nephew and Naruto had spread, and soon it came to a situation where all the major clans were calling for his team. All for the same obvious reason. They wanted to vet his team, to see what they could do. Politics would soon start to play on his team. Kakashi raised his eyebrows as the battle swung around. Sakura was on the defensive now as the boys drove on her hard. This happened whenever there was a free-for-all, two teammates joining to attack one. It was interesting, they seemed to do it unconsciously, swinging the focus of the battle from one another with only a few words uttered in between. Sakura caught Sasuke's blade with a gloved hand, pulled him close, and drove a haymaker into his belly. Naruto tried to slash at the outstretched hand, but she pulled the appendage back and caught one of his knives. She swung them away, and her hand flashed through hand signs. Sasuke tried to dash forward to stop her, but suddenly fell over, gripping his stomach and retching. Naruto was barely standing himself, and looked almost drunk. He looked around, seemed as if he was about to retch too, then, suddenly he slit his palm open and blinked as he suddenly regained his balance. Holy shit! You like it? The hell? Sasuke muttered from his place on the floor. It throws your sense of balance off by changing the flow of chakra in the inner ear. Sasuke retched some more before pulsing his chakra to release himself from the genjutsu. They were back on the offensive again, and Kakashi delved back into his thoughts. The one commonality between them all was that in the end they could all fight in close range. Sasuke was a combination long and close-range fighter, launching of ninjutsu from a distance before finally closing ranks and finishing thing personally. Sakura could be considered a mid-range fighter, her limited reserves limiting the range of her genjutsu, but again in close combat she was far more dangerous. Naruto was like Sasuke, using explosive tags to brutal efficiency and his dead-on accuracy to drive his opponents close. Once close the boy was fast and fluid in his attacks. He smiled. The battle raging in the training grounds shifted again. Sasuke was on the defensive, doing his best to stay out of range of Sakura's genjutsu. Yet, dodging to the best of his ability Naruto's explosive kunai. Kakashi raised an eyebrow as yet again the pool in center of the training ground disappeared in a blazing fireball. Thanky hell, he'd have to pay for that again. Sasuke dodged another explosive kunai, his hands flashing through hand signs. He let out a roaring grand fireball, and his teammates rushed to either side. Rank on Sakura and drove his attack brutally, swiping with chakra running through his blade. She dodged a few swings, but more hit home than missed him. An extra deep cut made her shoulder blossom into blood, and Kakashi decided that was enough. His decision was made. His team was ready. He dropped down and threw his three little pups away. They hit the floor with a grunt, and their beady little eyes stared at him in anger. Great way to abuse little kid sensei. Ma, abuse you? You three abuse your poor sensei all day with your whining. His voice got high as he mocked them. Sensei, we can't move another inch. Sensei, Sasuke can't breathe. Sensei, we're going to die if you leave us in this forest for 2 weeks. Sensei, you can't use us for target practice. What? Sakura indignant anger always made him smile. Sasuke really couldn't breathe. One of his lungs collapsed. I got him to the hospital, didn't I? You want some cheese with your wine, Sakura? He feigned annoyance. I never whined as much as you when I was a chunin, he remarked. By this point he'd helped them stand up again. Bet you did when you were a genin. Naruto chimed in too. Me a genin? Never. Your sensei was evaluated a chunin straight out of the academy. True fact. Bullshit. And finally Sasuke. What do genin know? His voice dribbled with condescension. He grabbed the three of them by the scruffs of their shirt. Let's go get lunch and no whining. Or I'll leave you three out here for a couple more days. After that we can go get our first C rank. The stopped their floundering in his hands. C rank? Naruto chimed in. He seemed absolutely pleased. Pachi. His brother had changed. Sasuke, sweet innocent Sasuke had changed. His little brother was now a ninja, now just like him, much in the same way that his blonde-haired friend was like him. Months ago he'd met Uzumaki Naruto in person. Seen the blonde-haired boy with his wide-toothed grin, and his watching calculating eyes beneath the facade of a child. An unstated understanding had occurred between them, but he hadn't realized how much Sasuke would change in the time PRD since then. His fun-loving brother was still there, but the innocence was gone. He'd known that would happen eventually, but, still. He'd hoped deep down that Sasuke would remain that innocent little boy he'd seemed like he would always be. His brother was currently taking any of those hopes and stomping them thoroughly into the ground. "Come on Nichan, are you even taking this seriously?" Itachi grunted in acknowledgement and dodged a kick aimed at his head. Itachi had always known Sasuke was skilled, that he was talented. He hadn't thought his brother was a genius like him, but now, actually trying in a spar against his brother, Itachi wondered how he hadn't spotted it, but Uzumaki Naruto had. He grunted as one of Sasuke's kicks connected with his head. He delivered a palm strike as retribution. Uzumaki Naruto was one of those people that seemed to see people's inherent talents and be able to draw them out. His eyes aimed towards the sky. It was almost noon. Sasuke would be leaving soon. "Sasuke, you'll be late if you don't get ready. Go to the Uchiha Armory and ask for some supplies. Idate-san will be happy to provide them for you. Be polite but curt." His brother looked at him and nodded. "Sasuke, be safe." His brother looked back, a smirk on his face. "Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry." How could he not worry? He'd held Sasuke in his arms with the solemn realization of exactly how frail a baby could be. He'd promised his mother to always protect his brother, but now he physically couldn't. Don't worry. He couldn't not worry. Sasuke, just by being Sasuke, made that impossible. He sighed as he walked from the clan training grounds. Sasuke wasn't the only thing on his mind. He'd been promoted to captain. He moved as fast as he could without looking conspicuous in the compound. He was an ANBU captain. Kakashi Hataki's rumored coerced removal from ANBU had left a slot open for captain. A slot that Itachi's squad had decided to apply him for. By the very nature of ANBU, a captain couldn't be assigned. He had to be made captain by his squad. He spotted a head of hair he'd rather not have. He moved even faster now, sprinting full speed to avoid him. Sushi caught him anyway, a grin plastered on his face. Itachi kept his own visage apathetic. "Sushi, are you still mad?" "No." "So yes." He sent an icy glare towards his squad mate and best friend. "No. Come on Itachi, it won't be that bad. You will be a great captain. Hell, you're the youngest captain in Konoha history. You even beat Sharingan no Kakashi. The only reason I got the job is because Sharingan no Kakashi resigned." Sushi laughed a little, his grin still not faltering. "Look, we've got a mission." He grabbed the scroll Sushi tossed at him with ease, barely thinking about the action at all. His eyes scanned through it. When he was finished, he burned the scroll. "Assassination." "Yeah, I'm surprised too. They almost never send out teams on assassination missions. It's usually solo." "Let's go." Sushi looked back at him, his grin gone. "Look Itachi, I wouldn't have suggested you to the squad if I didn't think you'd be a decent leader. They sure as hell wouldn't have accepted you if they didn't trust you with their lives." I said I'm not angry about it. But he had been somewhat worried. "Thanks." "No problem." "Naruto." Sakura's parents were afraid of him. He sat in muted silence, a smile on his face, and enjoying the rice and steamed fish they had cooked. They were afraid of him, he could feel it, see it in their eyes, or more specifically the way they avoided looking at him. Sakura, he could tell, was noticing it as well. They were courteous to him, nice enough folks. Not a harsh word was uttered, not a harsh cast. But they were afraid, terrified in a new way he wasn't accustomed to. They were nervous, jittery, and he couldn't help but to feel slightly uncomfortable because of it. He hadn't done anything to inspire fear. That was it, he hadn't done anything. He wasn't the loud, brash child needing attention. He wasn't pulling pranks and running around the village making a fool of himself. He'd forced people to acknowledge him, even as just an annoying little brat. And just an annoying little brat. They were afraid because they didn't know him. Thank you so much for this meal. You're welcome, Naruto-san. They seemed so careful with him. He smiled at them, beaming with wide teeth, letting small amounts of his chakra roll over them in tiny smoothing waves. Sakura noticed immediately, but a quick look between him and her parents and her eyebrows dropped. The nervous looks they were giving him slowed. They ate their food rather than picked at it like they were doing shortly before. Naruto-san. Sakura's mother spoke for the first time the entire dinner. Yes. She stopped for a moment to think. I don't really know you well enough to be asking something like, of you, Naruto-san. But please, Sakura, I know she's talented like you, but she's still my little girl. The woman needn't not even ask. No one would die. No one would have to sacrifice themselves. He wasn't the monster he'd been on the battlefield. His chakra capacity wasn't anywhere near where it was before he came back. He couldn't even use Kurama's chakra without it killing him, or DMN near getting close. But no one, absolutely no one would die. Especially not on some simple escort mission to Suna. No need to worry. We're a good team, it's just a simple escort mission, and if anything happens we have Kakashi-sensei with us. As long as he's there we'll be fine. He couldn't help but to smile. He poured more of his chakra over them. He finished the last of his meal, and helped Sakura clear the table. Then he walked home, his mind reeling. He wasn't the same little boy, he wasn't a little boy at all, not mentally at least. He'd seen his friends die, felt their blood spill on his skin. He'd seen them die for him, spend their lives to give him a few more precious moments. So when he'd arrived he'd been determined. He'd trained, slowly, carefully, watching for chances to learn. The things he already grabbed, saved him and tied them together as fast as he could. Because he'd need Sasuke, he'd need him like he'd need air. Like the flowers needed the bees. The two would never reach their full potential without one another. And Sakura who was the pillar that held the two of them up. The sole reasons they reached death's door again and again and again and came back. As he walked home he looked around him. People were staring. He'd learned long ago to ignore their stares, whether it be of spite, and eventually adoration. But now the stares were different. It wasn't the anger or resentment from his childhood. It wasn't the hero worship, adoration, or regret and shame he from his older years. It was fear. Unwarranted fear. But still fear. He frowned. Another issue he'd have to work with. Sasuke? The village gates loomed before him like gray of green monoliths. His heart sped up in excitement, and he had to fight to keep the manic grin off his face. Past them, sitting beneath a tree near the road that led to the entrance of the village, was Naruto. His blonde hair wild, yet glowing in the light of the dawn sun. He held a scroll in his hand, and his eyes casually flicked through it. Next to him, on the main village road, a caravan of large, wide-wheeled carts moved in a slow procession. On his back was a small travel pack filled with a few set of spare clothes and spare weapons, as well as bandages and a few ointments and antibacterial medications in case of infections. He frowned when he saw them. 12 in all. 12 long carts they'd have to watch with only 4 people, leaving 3 carts to guard for each of them. He frowned and scanned around for his sensei. He felt a flush of chakra, and spotted the flash of silver hair in one of the trees on the opposite side of the road. He nodded to his sensei, and then did the same to Naruto. Naruto smiled back, then went back to his scroll. He looked around and frowned again. Sakura wasn't here. Of all of them she was the most punctual. Sensei, where's Sakura? Kakashi dropped from the tree with a sigh, and Sasuke's eyes twitched in annoyance. Even before Kakashi spoke, he could feel the words of chastisement brushing against him. Sensei rarely had a kind word for any of them, and when he did it could often come off as an insult. Sasuke, you could look around for her. I mean, it's not like she's near the front of the caravan. Kakashi-sensei seemed to know that was wrong. Kakashi-sensei did in fact enjoy being in, but thank you, sensei. He turned and walked away. He found her a few minutes later talking with the client. He was perhaps the oldest person Sasuke had ever seen still alive. His hair was so gray it had turned a silver white. The wrinkles on his skin seemed to have been etched somehow with even smaller, even finer wrinkles that, despite logic saying otherwise, had more wrinkles. His smile was almost toothless, and the straggly remains of a beard could be seen growing on his chin. Sakura sat with him, her attention apt on what he was saying. I remember when I was a boy, when this village had just been built a few years prior. He stopped to take a breath, then spoke again. This entire road was forest. Then he laughed. Your name made sense then. My family got lost trying to find the village to trade. My father was angry and swore never to return here again after we sold our goods, but the prices was fair, and the next year we're making the trip again, with him swearing even more that he'd never return. The old man's smile turned somehow wider. I like it better with the road. He turned while speaking and grinned a toothless grin at Sasuke. Oh, and a third little munchkin arrives. Laughed again. Sasuke looked at the old man, then turned back and looked at his blonde-haired teammate. He took a few seconds to compare the two, then frowned and eventually gave up on his attempt. The old man was simply too old to compare to anyone. Sakura spoke up as he finally turned back around to face both her and their client. Sasuke-kun. She seemed rather cheerful, and he couldn't help the smile that formed on his face. This is Takagaki Hiroyasu-san. He was telling me about his life and the route we're taking. Sakura. He greeted. Are you ready? He nodded and turned to old man with his question. The old man smiled and pulled a map from the cart he sat on. He jumped down, and Sasuke was surprised to see his hunched form was only slightly taller than he was. He noted Kakashi and Naruto had managed to find their way over to them while Hiroyasu-san had been busy. See here, kiddos? We're gonna be moving along the main for the next few days. Then we'll be moving northeast into rice country. I thought we were going to Suna? The old man just smiled and continued to talk. From there it's a week and a half journey south into wind country using the Shannon Pass. The fabrics and tea from Konoha sells better in rice than in wind. From there we head to Suna with a load of fresh fruits, rice, and grains. Normally, afterwards I'd take the remaining goods from Konoha and travel to Iron Country to trade for metals and circle back to Konoha. But my grandson's finally old enough, and he's gonna be taking the rest of the trip for me from Suna. He smiled and rolled the map back up. Naruto. The vast plains of Rice Country made a green sea before his eyes. They walked slowly along the natural trail made by similar journeys 1,000 times before. He walked alongside a cart in the middle of the caravan, his eyes scanned the road in front of him. Nothing. He smiled. For a first C rank this was not so bad. Especially considering how things went the first time. The trip to Rice had spectacularly well, they'd arrived 2 days early making good time, and had even managed to leave within a day. He smiled at the good luck with a few more days they'd be in Suna. He had to fight back his glee. Gaara. A child Gaara still alone and afraid, but still one of his best friends. One of the people he could help right now. Even if he didn't know how he could, we would. He'd help Gaara. He'd show everyone in Suna just how good of a person he was. It was probably best not to dwell on it for now. Instead he focused his thoughts on other things. His skills had been progressing rather well these past few months, but he had a rather gaping hole in his skill set he thought he'd have addressed by now. The Kagebushin. His signature jutsu was unavailable to him, at least a way to explain how he learned it was unavailable to him. There'd be no way for him to explain it away, no excuse that wouldn't sound like a lie and arise even more suspicion from both his sensei and the Sandaime. He frowned at that. Instead he'd been forced to think about and apply himself to the limited skill set he could explain away. Mainly his limited knowledge of Fuinjutsu and his relatively brutal close-quarters combat preference. His favorite weapon was the kunai, or more specifically the exploding kunai. His aim had gotten wonderfully accurate thanks to Kakashi-sensei and what the man considered training. That and the modified trench knives his sensei had given him had made him somewhat formidable in combat despite his small size. "Ma," Kakashi-sensei called while slapping a hard palm on his shoulder. "You shouldn't zone out, Naruto." He nodded to his sensei and turned his attention back to the tall fields of grass. He pulled a kunai from his holster and swirled it around his hand, spinning the throwing blades as fast as he could manage. His eyes scanned the still grass. He saw nothing, but still, he was on alert. Thanks, sensei. He looked up at the man towering over him, and received an ice smile in response. No problem. His thoughts focused back on his skills as the carts continued on the road. The lack of Kagebushin would, in the long run, really affect his skill growth. While most of the things he learned he still remembered rather well, there were certain ideas and techniques he'd need his clones to study, or even perform. He sighed, maybe soon. Blue eyes turned back to the wild tall grass. It was a lush green, reaching high along the trail and swaying unbidden to the wind. He stopped. The grass was swaying against the wind. He looked back at his sensei, who blinked back at him then smiled. What is it, Naruto? He looked around. The grass had stopped moving. He pulled a kunai from his holster and twirled it in his hand. He built chakra in his palm and threw it. The instrument of death flew into the tall strands of grass, and he smirked as multiple explosions went off. A hail of shuriken flew from the grass as a result. He ducked and glimpsed Kakashi pulling the old man behind one of the carts to shield him. He grabbed more kunai and flung them further into the grass. More explosions, almost deafening in their loudness, sounded out. He felt chakra surge and felt the heat of a fireball flow past him set the grass ablaze. He lay down beside the cart, crouched low for cover. He waited a few moments for a responding attack, but nothing came. It seems they fled. Well, back on the road then. Kakashi was picking him up and patting him on the back. Good going, guys. You're almost as good as me when I was half your age. Naruto sighed. Daiichiro. F&D hell. Daiichiro cursed as he looked down at Eugene's severed arm. He was in a bad way. In a very bad way, his blood leaking on the floor, and his eyes glazed over unseeing. Shrapnel was buried in Eugene's side, and third-degree burns covered his legs and abdomen. He was probably going to die. Their squad didn't have a medic, and any pitiful thing he could do would have no effect whatsoever. Daiichiro, you stupid FNG moron. I told you to let them past. I told you we shouldn't even try for them. Shut up. He snarled at Seiko. Eugene groaned and sputtered in a vain attempt to talk. Just shut the hell up. He sat down amongst the matted grass and looked down. Eugene's blood was still spilling all over the floor. The rich iron scent was filling the small clearing they'd made. Bunch of little BSs. He snarled out, his palm tightened in anger. Seiko sat next to him, her short black hair fluttering in the wind as she did so. Look. He sighed. The last thing he needed now was her chewing him out over his mistake. Joseph Dash. I knew something was wrong. No way would Konoha send out a group of brats like that without them being at least decent. And look who was with them, Kakashi FNG Hataki. You should have listened to me. Now Eugene's FNG dead. He's not dead. He's missing an arm and covered in third-degree burns. He might as well be. You think your shitty first aid can fix a missing arm? She pointed at the mangled limb where fresh blood still spilled, like water from a leaky faucet. The rancid smell of blood filled his nose and made him sick. Daiichiro looked down and frowned. Seiko was right. Kakashi Hataki. His little BSs. Stupid as Eugene and his genjutsu ineptitude. He sighed and pulled out his kunai. We still gotta stop the caravans. He looked down at Eugene and frowned. The Shannon Pass trade route has to be shut down. Maybe. He stopped talking and let the silence fill the void for a few moments. I'm sorry. And he ended it. A few hours later, with Eugene's body in the ground, Daiichiro voiced both his and Seiko's current feelings. Kakashi Hataki. Sakura. The dark night was all-encompassing. It pressed onto her senses like a boulder on her chest. She could barely see more than a few meters before her, and only the dim light of the campfire allowed even that. The moon was supposed to be out, but dark clouds blocked its light, and the distant light of the stars as well. She sat in her tree branch and did her best to keep watch anyways. Kakashi-sensei sat atop another tree far off and distant. His lone eye watching the darkness with light disinterest. He seemed bored, but with sensei you could never really know, could never really be sure exactly how he felt. Sakura. Sensei's voice called out. Hi. Push some chakra to your ears and nose. Only a little. She did as she was told, and the darkness receded. Not that suddenly it became brighter, no, instead her senses became sharper. She could hear the soft yet rapid thumping of Naruto's heart, a quick fire drum beat that thudded like raindrops on sheet metal. Sasuke's and the old man's heart were both slow, steady things that beat in opposite sync of each other. "Arigato, sensei." He said nothing and turned his eyes back to the forests. She moved to a slightly more comfortable spot and sat and watched and waited. It had been a few days since the attack on the road, and Team 7 had more or less been on edge the entire time. An attack was bound to come sometime soon, Kakashi was sure of it, and so for the past few days Sensei had stayed up to stand watch, and one of them had accompanied him to help. Sakura clenched her gloved fists and turned her head clockwise towards the sound of rustling leaves. Sensei was moving before she said anything. "Wake the boys," he said as he ran through hand signs. A second later, a puff of chakra smoke revealed a small pudge-nosed dog with a bored look on its face. "Pakin." "Ma, Kakashi, it's been a few months." The dog took a deep sniff and turned to face her. "Really, Kakashi, isn't she a little too young?" Sakura stiffened. She wasn't too young to be a ninja. "I passed the genin exam, I'm old enough to be a ninja." The dog barked in laughter, then turned back to Kakashi. "That's not what I was talking about, brat." It grinned a sly grin, and Kakashi-sensei gave it a deadpan stare. "I thought I told you to wake the boys, Sakura." She blinked, then dropped down from the treetops. She found Sasuke in his tent and kicked him in the side. Then did it 2 more times to be sure he was awake. "Wake up, Sasuke." He mumbled something incoherent before finally saying one single audible word. "No." Sensei said, "Wake up." He grunted and stood up, looked around blearily and stood. She moved to Naruto's tent while Sasuke got his bearings. He was already awake, trench kunai in hands with a solemn look on his face. "I heard you waking up the Bitri." She smiled and went back. To see Kakashi waiting for them, the dog he'd summoned sat beside him, a surprisingly bored look on its face. "Pakin and a clone of mine will watch the client. You 3 will stick together and guard the caravan. I'll go out and look for anything suspicious." "Naruto." He twirled the kunai in his hand as his eyes watched the moonless light. He felt a tight tension in his chest and couldn't help but display his scowl prominently on his face. They were out there, whoever had attacked his team, and he was ready for them. He was near the tail end of the caravan. The winds twisted and a smell, a bare hint of a thing, wafted past his nose. He ducked, dropping from the tree branches and falling into the dark underbrush. Sensei wasn't with them, at least not in person, and he had to be careful. He didn't have even a tenth of his original chakra stores yet, and his body was still too young to do any real damage to a serious adult opponent. But if people underestimated him, well, Uzumaki Naruto had killed before to protect his friends. He'd kill again to protect them and their futures. He watched and waited. The leaves above him rustled, and he sent an explosive kunai flying. It thudded against a tree and exploded, sending shrapnel and tree fragments flying in a blender of tree bark and death. He rolled suddenly as a kunai hit where he'd been a few moments before. "You know what, for a little brat, you adorable." He looked around and saw nothing. That yellow hair and those puffy cheeks. He heard a light giggle and stilled himself in the darkness. "It's too bad I'm gonna have to cut your throat ear to ear." He closed his eyes and took long, slow breaths. Keep calm, he had to keep calm. He'd faced more dangerous people, fought and nearly died dozens of times. He drew more kunai and sent them flying from his left to where he thought he'd heard the voice. The tree exploded and he heard a muffled grunt followed by the sound of rock shattering. He grinned. Sakura was on the offensive. He reached into his pocket and unfurled a scroll. He pushed chakra to his legs and jumped high, twirling as he did so. It rained kunai, and the night sounded with explosions. He heard another grunt of pain and the sound of trees being felled and followed. Team 7 was on the move. He'd be dead if he let his friends get hurt. Sasuke, duck, weave, swing up and roll to avoid the kunai through the ribs, and swipe up to try and take off that arm. She pulled back, and so Sasuke attacked. Chakra running through his matte gray sword. She was fast, but really fast, but Sensei had made sure he was as fast as he could be. He didn't as much dance around her as dance with her, following the flow of her attack the best he could. You little brats are pretty good. You know that? He dodged under her Kunia swipe, and replaced himself just in time to dodge a mountain of rock rising up and smashing against where he once stood. He replaced himself 3 more times to distance them. He pulled out a kunai and sent it flying, it exploded and she grunted in annoyance. In the distance he heard a staccato of explosions and smiled. Naruto was having fun, and from the sounds of it trying to hear whoever was attacking him towards Sakura. He grinned and flashed through hand signs. The heat for the fire jutsu built up in his chest, rose gradually as the pressure seeped past his lungs, then he spewed hot burning fire from his mouth and lit up the night. He dodged as she chose that moment to attack, and he grinned. She was god-med fast, but Sasuke was quick. He pulled his blade from his sheath and cleaved through her arm in one swift movement. The world stopped. She looked shocked, surprised, and then turned into a pile of mud. Sasuke gripped his blade shorter and snorted. He headed towards the sounds of the explosions. Maybe he'd find Naruto before the explosion-happy idiot leveled the only forest in Rice County. Sakura. For a moment, Sakura believed she'd actually defeated a Jounin on her own. Just for a moment, for a few brief precious seconds, she believed she'd actually managed to land a fatal blow to the Jounin's temple, liquefying her brain. Then she turned into mud, and Sakura had to jump back to avoid the ground swallowing her whole. She landed on the side of a tree, hopped off and up into the tree branches and did the best to hide herself. She kept moving, of course. She had no delusions of being hidden, and sitting still was a death sentence. In truth, she was waiting for the boys to locate her and help her at least stand a chance. She had no delusions of fighting a Jounin, even if she could handle her mud clones. You know, all you little brats are pretty good. Sakura leapt from where she was standing rather than respond, then she planted a foot on a tree branch ahead of her and fell into the forest underbrush. Above her the moon shined luminously bright, and she could hear the not-too-distant explosions of Naruto's enthusiasm. She guessed by the pace and general direction he was trying to rip a path her way, which meant Sasuke had figured the same thing out and was headed her way as well. She tightened her gloved fists and stopped for a few seconds to catch her breath. She almost lost her head for it and ducked under a thrown kunai. The dark-haired woman was back, tall, almost taller than Sensei, and lean with skin a tad bit too pale. A Jounin vest on her form. Sakura didn't waste her chakra trying to cast genjutsu, it was a mud clone. I really don't like hurting kids, you know? But the clone lunged forward, and she had to lean back, tuck in her legs and roll back. She replaced herself with a log to make distance. The clone closed the distance before the kunai got halfway to where she'd thrown it. DMN it. She jumped back again, doing her best to avoid close combat. She was strong with her gloves, but the woman was even stronger. Genjutsu didn't affect elemental clones, and she didn't have Naruto's explosions to make up for it. She ducked again, the whizzing of kunai alerting her, and she blinked as it buried itself into the mud clone and exploded. Naruto, you but. Sakura-san. Her blonde-haired teammate whined. He landed next to her and pulled more from his pockets. He gave her a handful and smiled a cheeky grin. Bright blue eye glimmering in the light. He turned around and they pressed their backs together. She's using clones. Elemental clones. Ah. He responded. Well, let's flush out the real one then. She blinked and resisted the urge to turn and slap. Instead her eyes stayed focused on the forest. Easier said than done, my sensing skill isn't too great, and yours are worse than mine. She tapped the back of Naruto's hand, a sign for them to move to somewhere else, and sprinted back into the treetops. They regrouped a few moments later. The forest's working to her advantage. Naruto had a tendency to state the obvious. Yes, I know that. Let's get rid of the forest? She blinked, considered it, then blanched at the idea. It was good, simple, stupid, and yet. She blinked and looked at her teammate. You've got enough explosions on you to level a forest? He laughed and pulled out a large storage scroll. And then some. Kakashi. The explosions sounding off a good mile and a half from Kakashi Hatake did nothing to bolster his confidence in his blonde hair. Student. Even as he hunted down his prey, he idly wondered exactly how much munitions his blonde student carried on him. The barrage of explosions had been ongoing for a good 10 minutes now, something quite unheard of in the ninja world, and seemed to have indication of stopping anytime soon. He blinked, and came to the conclusion it might be best that he teach the pups some supplementary jutsu. An over-reliance on one skill would lead to their early deaths. Kakashi Hatake. Yes? And you are? Daiichiro. He nodded and uncovered Obito's eye. He could feel the slow drain on his chakra instantly. This was a rather stupid attack, you realize that? The brown-haired man didn't say anything else, and instead rushed forward. They locked kunia and danced for a few moments. He was good, Kakashi admitted. Fast, with precise movements and no real energy wasted doing them. He had a decent amount of strength to him as well, despite that speed. But still Obito's eyes exposed all. The thing about the human mind was it started doing things before you even realized it did. Your subconscious mind made more than 90% of your decisions before sending them to your conscious mind, where things were then rationalized by you to justify your own decisions. He saw the change in Daiichi's chakra before the man even realized he wanted to cast the jutsu. He saw the flow, the hand signs, the manipulations, and copied them moment for moment. Ad nauseam, until finally, Earth release, Earth flow spears. He spoke the words as Daiichiro mumbled them. Jounin didn't need to scream the name of their jutsus like fresh genin, but speaking the technique out loud as he copied them tended to unnerve his opponents. He was leaping into the air even as spears of hardened rock rose from the ground on both sides of the forest. He couldn't copy the supplementary jutsu the man was casting. Instead, he replaced himself with a log a few meters away and did a jutsu of his own. Lightning release, lightning quake flash. The air filled with sparks of lightning, and he watched as his target was hit, and then turned into a log. He smirked, pulled a scroll from one of his vest pockets and unfurled it. He bit his thumb, then summoned his Umbu standard issue katana. He felt the familiar weight of the weapon in his hand and smiled. He wasn't Scarecrow anymore. But he still had teammates to protect. Seiko. She ducked under the pink-haired Pipsqueak's punch. Its speed was startlingly fast, and the fact that broke the boulder she'd replaced herself with into splinters of rocks even more so. She frowned and considered her options. She'd have to kill them. They were too good, too skilled for being so young. If they'd just been some snot-nosed brats, or even just slightly above average, she wouldn't have even considered it. But they were too good and worked startlingly well together, that and they'd killed Eugene. Even if she hadn't really cared much for the man, dying like that dot on some sheet. B-ranked mission, offered by some explosion-happy blonde brat. He deserved a better death than that. She replaced herself once more, and swung out with her legs sweeping the black-haired kid back. Really, they worked rather well together, better than she had with even her original team, and she'd loved her two idiots like brothers, before, well, that a war ago. She replaced herself again, and dodged more explosions, and grunted as she leapt back to avoid a fireball from behind her. The black-haired brat who'd burned half of Eugene's face off had arrived. The blonde-haired brat was singing annoying. She caught a glimpse of gold highlighted with silver, and jumped away in time to dodge a swipe from an extended kunia. She caught glimpses of light blue, deep orbs blue as the summer sky in a small tanned face. She'd seen those eyes before, she'd seen his hair before. Sky blue eyes, hair as yellow as gold. It brought back memories to when she was a girl. A genin just a few months out of the academy, stationed at an outpost just a few miles from one of Iwa's major resource routes. He'd flashed in without a sound, and her sensei had collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath his feet as his life bled from his throat. He was dead, before he'd even know what had happened, before she'd even processed what the flash had meant. He was dead. Her sensei had died like an animal. He too had deserved a better death. Then he'd butchered the rest of the garrison, killing 24 Chunin and Jonin combined in just a few seconds. Flashing about the base, throwing kunai and felling men like wheat. He'd reappeared in front of her teammates and herself. His hair golden, his eyes sky blue. The deepest, brightest blue she'd ever seen. She remembered his face, even with the bodies around him, even with the butchery he'd committed, even with 24 more bodies to his name. Not a spot of blood was on him. He'd looked at them, a frown on his face as he watched them cower. I don't kill kids. Then he'd disappeared, a bright flash taking him away. Like that had anything mattered? The words echoed in her head. I don't kill kids. Someone should have killed Namikaze Minato before he'd ever earned his headband. Maybe he didn't kill kids. But she would. Suddenly it slammed on her. Golden hair, those same eyes, a team far more skilled than they had any right being, and Kakashi FNG Hatake. It made sense. If Namikaze Minato had a kid, his son would be as brilliant as he had been. If Namikaze Minato had a kid, Konoha would keep it secret. If Namikaze Minato had a kid, of course the man's now famous student would be his teacher. She didn't dodge the incoming punch from the pink one. Instead she pushed chakra to her arms and blocked the blow. She grunted as she felt a fracture race its way up her arm but ignored the pain. She grabbed the girl, suddenly pulling her close and taking both of them to the forest floor. When they landed she smashed her head into the ground as rough as she could, once, twice, thrice, before sending a vicious punch into her nose. It broke and blood flashed on her hands. She moved to grab her head and end it, but had to jump back. The short sword, matte gray, barely visible by the light of the moon, had nearly taken her head off. The pain from her arm was dizzying, but even still she couldn't help but notice the blood-red eyes that now watched her, a single tamo swirling around his iris. Of course it'd be an Uchiha. She replaced herself, and watched as the blonde, falling from a tree above, landed a death blow to a mud clone that had been her. They came together, the Namikaze BSTRD and the Uchiha. She grunted, flared her chakra as her resolve hardened. They were a bunch of brats. Good, but she could take them. She'd kill the blonde brat, and stop another Namikaze from growing old enough to butcher Iwa's people. Ma! A voice called out from the forest. I can't leave you three alone, can I? Naruto, Sasuke, take Sakura and retreat. I'll handle it from here. She looked up at the trees and frowned when she saw the bloodied form of Kakashi Hatake. A katana in hand, his lone Sharingan bared. Daiichiro? She asked. Dead. She noticed his katana was bloodied almost to the hilt. She nodded up because? What else was there to do? You can leave or you can die. She looked past him, at the darkness where the blonde BSTRD's child had disappeared. She looked at him, where the blonde-haired BSTRD's student stood, stoic, death incarnate. She made her decision and left. Her teammates were dead, but now IWA would know, and one day there would be no second coming of Namikaze Minato, as far as IWA would be concerned. XX authors note XXX. I have another story idea. This one was inspired by Written in Reverse by J. Menace. Check it, his story. I really like it, and it's one of the few fanfictions I actually still read when I manage to get the time to. One small step. The battle ended and Kakashi took a languid look around. His students were alive, though barely. Naruto and Sasuke lay on the bridge exhausted. He sighed and looked up at the bright sky. White wisps of clouds trekked across the dark, vast blue expanses. He smiled. All in all, it went better than he expected. Sakura, help me grab the boys. He called out as he started the slow trek towards his male students. Then the skies blackened. A feeling, a sensation hard to describe with words, washed over him. A deep, consuming sense that the entire energy of the world had focused on one point, the awe-inspiring connotation that something was going on. A sick, terrible feeling came with it, like some wretched, unnatural, inhuman thing had occurred above him. He turned his eyes to the sky. The clouds were gone, and the sky. A retch of space-time had occurred, a monstrous deformation of the sky, a great wretched scar that seemed to rip its way across the once endless blue, marring it a deep, deep, deep black. Light seemed to fade before the jagged edge of its periphery, and within the deep, eternal black, a multitude of stars. A billion pinpricks of white spots against a deep, eternal darkness. It was amazing, startling, and very, very real. Obito's Sharingan told him it was no illusion, he was gazing upon something. The threshold of existence unraveling for just one momentary second. Flitting about and yet stationary, in a magnificent yet impossible to comprehend way. He blinked, and suddenly, the tear wavered, as if his very observation of it made it unstable. Then, suddenly 2 figures fell. Dropped from the impossibility hanging above him, free-fallen, down, 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 until finally, they crashed into the water below, sending water crashing against the beams of the bridge. One small step. Time is a dimension. A quasi-planar thing that waylays itself in and out and over and through every atom, every molecule, every string of existence of all limited dimensional planes. Time, all of it, every possibility, every path, every second, minute, hour, year, every choice one could ever take or not take, happens at the same time. We simply experience one limited infinitesimally small portion of its great spherical mass. Sometimes the sphere wavers. The great orb, the interweaving strings of all existence becomes weakened, and in these moments, in these brief flashes of something you can squeeze through the strings, push your way through the weave of the orb of existence, and go beyond. For just a moment, for just a brief fraction of a second, but this second, it was all they needed. Sasuke? She loved Uzumaki Naruto. She'd never admit it aloud, and she'd only say the words to him when they were in the most NTMT of their private places, but she loved the idiot. She loved him. She loved him not with the same fiery passion that she loved and hated Itachi. But not differently. It was hard to describe a need for someone in your life. A constant want for them, an expectation that they'll be there and your incapability to conceive that they won't be. The fluttering she'd felt in her heart when they'd stood there at the Valley of the End. Her headband in his hand, his eyes, a mirror of the clearing blue sky above them, staring at her. A grim scowl on his face. His blood pooling beneath his feet. Her mind reeling at what he'd done. Moron. She whispered. Why? She'd asked. She fought back tears, and bile, and revulsion at herself. Because. He had stopped then, to take a deep, slow, haggard breath. Then he had coughed a wretched, horrible cough that still haunted her dreams. He gripped her arms and stared her in the eyes. I love you. God damn it. And then he'd smiled. Like that would make things okay. She'd laughed then. It had been a sad, horrible sound, more a groan than anything else. She'd thought he was dying. The idiot was dying on her. She'd used her other hand to brush a deep red lock from his head. She'd kissed him rather than say the words. Those 3 words that I had tasted. Of salt, blood, and sweat. Yeah. Smiling and dying. He'd filled a small part of the deep crevice that Itachi had left in her psyche and heart, and here he was smiling and dying, and bleeding, and loving her. Idiot. KNG hyperactive, over-optimistic idiot. They stood there for a while, before final she pulled her hand from his chest. His face when she'd done so was burned into her mind. The look on his face, confusion and fear and betrayal, and yet still a little bit of love. Sasuke, BSRD.